Chapter 277. Shui Rui alighted from the carriage in front of the residence. Just as a silver sedan with a dazzling silver cover left the door, the second-in-command of the Shui family, Su Li, stood on the stone steps and watched respectfully as it left. When he turned his head and saw Shui Rui, he came down the steps to welcome him. "Eldest young master has returned." Shui Rui looked at the sedan that was moving further away and turned his head. "Whose sedan is that?" For a sedan to have a dazzling silver cover, it must be an official of the third rank and above. There were only a few of them in the imperial court. Su Li answered, "It is the junior supervisor of the Celestial Commissioner, Sir Ren." Shui Rui was slightly surprised. The Celestial Commissioner, Ren Qishu, was the first person appointed by the Grand Advisor. He held a high position but was eccentric. He did not have much contact with the Shui family. He did not know why he had come today. "Where is grandfather now?" "Sir is meditating in the South Pavilion." Shui Rui turned to enter the residence and went to the South Pavilion to see Shui Lingnan. Minister Shui had just received a guest and there was still tea left on the stone table. A gold-plated lion head cauldron had been lit not long ago. He was burning incense. When he saw Shui Rui enter the pavilion, he asked, "You did not return last night?" He drank a few cups with the Ninth Highness and the others, so he had a hangover in the restaurant. Shui Rui looked at the extra teacups on the table and asked, "I saw the junior supervisor's sedan leaving just now. May I know why he came today?" Shui Lingnan shook his head. "Just talking about an old matter." Shui Rui saw that he did not want to talk about it in detail, so he did not pursue the matter. He talked about the announcement he saw on the way back. After Shui Lingnan heard this, he said, "I already know about this matter. This is an errand that the Emperor assigned to the Celestial Commissioner. There is no need to care about it. Leave it to others to worry about." With the status of the Shui family in the imperial court, they did not need to do these extra things to please the emperor. However, Shui Rui deliberately mentioned it in front of Shui Lingnan. He had other thoughts. "I have never heard that the son of Yun Hua had a descendant. Have you heard about it long ago?" Shui Lingnan recalled, "This matter was spoken of a long time ago. No one has mentioned it in recent years. Back then Yun Hua and Princess Liyue did indeed have a son. After the couple passed away, the son was sent to Taoism by the royal family. It was said that he was carrying out the wishes of his parents. This matter gradually faded from people's minds." Shui Rui asked suspiciously, "Then why did you not send someone to receive him? Instead, you allowed him to go back and forth alone. He disappeared without a trace and then came back to look for him so openly?" Shui Lingnan pinched the tip of his beard and looked at him. After a moment of silence, he slowly told him the hidden story. "Why did you not send someone to receive him? What do you think Prince Xiang did when he left the capital last year? He used the excuse of sightseeing to go to Mount Longhu to receive the Daozi. Who knew that he would come back empty-handed? Prince Xiang returned to the capital alone. He had brought the portrait of the Daozi with him. On the way he searched for him but he returned empty-handed. Even the portrait was lost on the way. Because of this, His Majesty flew into a rage. Prince Xiang admitted that he did not do his job well and closed his doors." When Shui Rui finished listening to the whole story, he was very shocked. After thinking for a moment, he came to a sudden realization. "In that case, the lost item that I asked someone to help Your Highness find during the grand examination this year was that Daozi's portrait?" Shui Lingnan nodded. Shui Rui was bewildered in his heart. Since the portrait was lost, then where did the portrait on today's announcement come from? Could it be that the portrait was found? That's not right. It hasn't been long since the scroll of the grand examination was sealed, so how could it be that fast? He pondered in his heart and felt that there was another possibility, so he probed, "All these years, could it be that the ninth prince has been cultivating together with the descendants of Yun Hua?" A few days after the ninth prince returned to the capital, the Celestial Commissioner posted a notice to look for the descendants of Yun Hua and Princess Liyue. There was even a portrait. This made it hard for Shui Rui not to link these two matters together. Yes, they are cultivating with the same sect. Not only did Shui Lingnan's words affirm Shui Rui's guess, it also made Shui Rui think even more in his heart. The ninth prince, Lu Tan, was younger than Shui Lingnan and was the only son of his aunt, imperial consort Shui. Due to his frail body, Lu Tan left the capital to learn the Tao at a young age and returned to the capital once every 3 years. Since childhood, Lu Tan and Shui Lingnan were cousins, so they could be considered to be close. It wasn't that Shui Lingnan hadn't heard Lu Tan talk about the matters of the Tao all these years, but he had never heard Lu Tan mention the descendant of Yun Hua and Princess Liyue. Now it seemed like Lu Tan had intentionally concealed it. Looking at his grandfather's attitude, it did not seem like it was the first day he found out about this, yet he did not mention a word about it, and only told the Taoist today when he returned to the capital. Shui Rui pondered over it and suddenly he understood. He understood why his grandfather asked him to befriend the seventh prince, Lu Hao, and why he asked him to find an excuse to turn against the seventh prince. It was inevitable to talk about the situation in the imperial harem. The current emperor had one empress and 3 concubines. The eldest son was the empress, but he died young. The empress was sick and weak. There was only one daughter left and there was no hope for her to continue. Then there was his aunt, imperial concubine Shui. More than 10 years ago she gave birth to a son, Lu Tan. She lived in the mountains all year round. Because she was far away from the court, the important officials didn't pay attention to her. There was also concubine Lv Xian who gave birth to 3 sons. Unfortunately, the 3rd prince died of an illness at the age of 6, the 5th prince drowned at the age of 4, leaving behind the 11th prince who was young and immoral, who followed behind Lu Hao all day without any limelight. Finally there was the 7th prince, Lu Hao's birth mother, concubine Yin Shu. Concubine Shu came from a military family. Her father was the first assistant of the late emperor's cabinet. He was bestowed the title of Tiger General who protected the country. He was good at fighting and had outstanding military service. 6 years ago when he died, the emperor personally sent him off with his coffin. After his death, he ordered his son Yin Peng to inherit the title of duke. The Yin family was a noble family. They were only below the emperor's surname. They were the most prosperous family in the capital. Even the Shui family, who had served the emperor for 6 generations and 3 generations of elders, had to temporarily follow behind them. The crown prince had not been appointed, and the eastern palace had no ruler. However, everyone in the court knew this. Most of them privately saw Lu Hao as the future emperor. There were countless people who wanted to flatter him. Because Lu Hao was talented in both literature and martial arts, no prince could compare to him. When Shui Rui and Lu Hao were friends, he was still young and full of vigor. He once thought that Lu Hao was courting the emperor and showing weakness to the Yin family. He had no intention of taking the position. Now, it seemed that Lu Hao's actions that day were just to deceive people and confuse them. It was not that he did not want to, but it was just not the right time. 2 months ago he and Lu Hao had a falling out, so the 2 families did not have any contact. Although there were discussions in the capital, they were only rumors and did not involve anything important. It was probably because Lu Tan was still in the mountains and no one knew about it. Shui Rui thought that his grandfather must have known that Lu Tan was going to return to the capital at that time. After he returned this time, there was no need for him to go back. Therefore he let him and Lu Hao cut off contact in advance. It was better than having a falling out now and being criticized by others. It was so that outsiders could not understand the position and attitude of the Shui family. How could such a painstaking arrangement not have any ulterior motives? After thinking about this, Shui Rui looked at the old man in front of him again. He was in awe and a little heavy. Qingbai, you were brought up by grandfather. Your father passed away early and your mother was weak. Grandfather knew that you were smart and sensible and you were more competitive than others since you were young. Therefore he did not hide many things from you. We are the only branch of the Shui family, but we do not have many children. Your second uncle is like that, so we cannot count on him. Grandfather has always been strict with you because he has high hopes for you. In the future, the rise or fall of the Shui family, whether it is a blessing or a curse, depends on whether you live up to expectations. Shui Lingnan suddenly sighed with emotion, and then he stood up from the cushion before raising his hand to pat Shui Rui's broad shoulder. As he looked at this grandson of his that was even taller than him now, there was a gratified and worried expression in his eyes, and then he sighed before shaking his head and leaving Shui Rui alone in the pavilion to think. After drinking the medicine soup, Yu Shu woke up in the afternoon. Her headache was much better, but her throat was dry and her nose was blocked. She still had cold symptoms. Seeing that she had woken up, Xiao Dai and Xiao Qing hurriedly poured tea for her and helped her up from her seat. After a while Lin Fu heard the news and came in. He stood outside the door and reported that the Ji family and the Xiaojiang family had each sent a box of silver this morning. They took the IOUs and asked her how she was going to deal with the large sum of money. In fact, because the 2 boxes of silver were personally asked by Yu Shu last night, he didn't dare to make the decision to keep it in the account. Yu Shu felt uncomfortable, so she did not think about what Lin Fu was thinking. She said in a rough voice, "Just take it into the income of the restaurant. How much did we lose yesterday? Let me have a look at the account book." Hearing this, Lin Fu beamed with joy. "Including this money, we actually made more than 400 taels yesterday. I will go and get the account book for you. Originally, when they opened the restaurant on the first day, they planned to lose money with the excuse of free food and wine. Unexpectedly, they made a profit after the two suckers paid the bill. After a while, the detailed account book of yesterday was sent to Yu Shu. She glanced through it and did not find anything wrong. Then she asked Lin Fu about the business today. Hearing that there were many customers, she was relieved. She was afraid that the customers yesterday would be scared by the price of the dishes in the forgotten airport and would not dare to come again. It seemed that there were still many rich people in the north of the city. After dealing with the business, Yu Shu asked Lin Fu, "Is the kitchen busy now?" "I'm not in a hurry. The excitement of lunch has passed. Miss, you must be hungry. What would you like to eat? I'll ask the kitchen to make it." Lin Fu's attitude towards Yu Shu was obviously warmer and more attentive than yesterday. The first reason was that he had seen Yu Shu's temper at the banquet table with the nobles yesterday. He knew that she wasn't someone to be trifled with, so he was afraid of her. The second reason was that she had dealt with those two troublemakers with just a few words last night. He had seen Yu Shu's methods and knew how powerful she was, so he was convinced. "See if there is any light porridge soup. Bring me a bowl and make a few vegetarian dishes. Find a food box to put them in." Yu Shu paused and said, "No matter how much you spend, put it on my account. Don't confiscate it." Lin Fu hesitated for a moment. He remembered that Yu Shu asked him about the sea-based soup last time, so he did not say anything and left. Yu Shu put on her clothes and sat up from the bed. She asked the maidservant to fetch water for her to wash up, changed into a clean robe and combed her hair. Xiao Qing saw that she was ready to leave after tidying up, so she persuaded, "Miss, are you going back? Young master ordered you to rest here for 2 days. It is more convenient with this maidservant serving you." At this time Yu Shu was thinking about Jing Qin. Now that her body had recovered, she could get down from the bed. How could she be willing to stay any longer? She coaxed them a little and called Gui Lu over. She gave him some silver to hire a sedan chair. After eating the porridge, she carried the food box and left on the sedan chair. Chapter 278. Yu Shu drowsily sat on the sedan chair and took a nap. She didn't hear the occasional chatter on the road. When she arrived at the south of the city, the sedan chair stopped at Huixing Street. She yawned and got down with the food box. She looked left and right and used a round fan to cover half of her face. Then she turned into an alley. Thinking about it, there were not many people during the Lantern Festival last night, so she didn't see anyone on the road. She quickly walked to the door of the small courtyard, took out the key and unlocked the lock. Then she put the lock on the knocker and entered the courtyard in a flash. She gently closed the door and dropped the bolt. When she turned around, she saw a slender figure wearing a clean white robe in front of the door of the west room. Her eyes widened in surprise and she quickly ran up to him, saying in a low voice, "Jingchen, you're back." Her joy could not be expressed in words. Looking at the girl in front of him, Jingchen smiled faintly and nodded. He then noticed that her voice was different. He looked at her face and noticed that there was a trace of illness. He did not think much and put his hand on her forehead. He felt that the back of his hand was slightly hot. He immediately frowned. "You're sick?" Yu Shu made an "oh" sound. She felt that his hand on her forehead was cold. She shrunk her neck and pulled down his sleeve. She led him to the big room. She saw that the empty dishes on the table had been washed and muttered, "Why did you wash them?" She pointed to a stool and asked him to sit. She put down the food box and said, "I just got sick last night. I drank the medicine and the doctor looked at me. It's not a big deal. I'll be fine in 2 days." Jing Qin saw that she did not care and was still worried. He asked, "The prescription I gave you, did you make the medicine? Did you take it on time?" "Yes, I take it every day." Yu Shu took out the white bottle of medicine and handed it to him. She placed the bowl and chopsticks. Jing Qin unplugged the bottle stopper and took a whiff of the medicinal fragrance. He shook his head in pity and said, "This pill has been boiled, but its quality is lacking. It lacks 30% of its medicinal efficacy. After you finish eating these, I will make more for you." "Okay, you eat first." Yu Shu handed him the chopsticks and sat opposite him. She held her chin and looked at him with a smile. "When did you come back?" Jing Qin said, "Last night." He paused and asked her, "Did you bring the adversity-blocking stone?" "Always." "Where's your sword?" "It's on the bedside." "Where did you stay last night?" Jing Qin leisurely ate his meal, and the two of them asked each other about each other. That night when they parted in the suburbs in a hurry, Yu Shu did not have the time to tell him in detail. She took the opportunity while he was eating to roughly tell him what happened after he left. She only omitted the part where she went out to look for him in the heavy snow that day, and the part where she almost missed the strange arts examination. After you left, I passed the Dian exam and recognized Aunt Hui as my godmother. When Brother Shui came back from outside the capital, I asked him to find out about your whereabouts. When I found out that you left the city on the day you left, I thought of looking for you near the strange cloud temple. Jing Qin put down his chopsticks. When he thought of the situation when he saw her in the forest that night, he felt extremely guilty and said, "I'm sorry I made you worry." Yu Shu touched her nose and whispered, "It's not your fault." Although that day in the forest, the two made it clear that they could no longer talk about love affairs and become old friends, but when she saw him today she still felt close and there was no awkwardness. "That's right." Jing Qin asked, "When we parted that night, you said that you are now living in the Ji family, the family that your mother remarried. What happened? Didn't they kick you out in Yang?" Yu Shu snorted and said, "When this matter is mentioned, I am full of anger. Do you think I wanted to go to their house? It was that old thing from the Ji family who forced me to teach his granddaughter the 6 lines divination technique. Oh, it is the copper coin divination technique that I often use for divination." Jing Qin slightly frowned. "How did they force you?" Yu Shu waved her hand and did not want to talk about it in detail. She felt that she would lose face if she talked about it, so she vaguely said, "In any case, I was forced to agree to live in their house. Once I teach Miss Ji, I will be free." She did not want to explain, but Jing Qin, who had recovered his memory, was not so easy to fool. Although he could not fall in love with Yu Shu now, Yu Shu still had a place in his heart. Other than master and martial uncle, this person in front of him was the one who treated him the best. When he lost his memory, she took care of him meticulously and helped him find his memory. Knowing that he was in trouble, she did not leave him and suffered for him. He could not repay such a person, so how could he let others bully her? "If you don't want to go, then don't go. What did they use to force you? Tell me and I will help you ask for an explanation." Jing Chen's expression did not change, but a hint of coldness flashed across his clear and bright eyes. The people of the Taoist sects were mostly pure and did not like to fight, but their celestial master sect emphasized on trust and righteousness. Towards Yu Shu, he was trustworthy and righteous. He remembered the promise he made to her that day, but as long as he stayed by her side, he would definitely protect her. Yu Shu scratched her neck awkwardly. She could see that Jing Chen was serious. If she really told him how Ji family threatened her, he would really dare to go to them. Just like when Ji Xingxuan got the yellow frost stone, she and Jing Chen discussed how to get it back, and Jing Chen proposed to get it back by force without any pressure. In his eyes, good or evil, there was another yardstick and he did not need others to measure it. But what should he say about the Ji family's matter? "In fact, I also have something to ask of them," Yu Shu deliberated and said, "You know, my mother is a concubine of the third master of the Ji family. They use this and I am always under their control. If I want to get my mother out, I have no other way but to make them let her go willingly. So when they threatened me, I took advantage of the situation and negotiated with them. When I teach Miss Ji well, they will let my mother go." Jing Chen still did not know much about the secular world. Yu Shu spent a lot of time to make him understand that she had to stay in the Ji family for a while. "I was not bullied in the Ji family. Don't worry, Brother Shui helped me. The old thing in the Ji family is afraid of me." Yu Shu joked with Jing Chen. She did not want him to pursue the matter further, so she quickly changed the topic. "By the way, didn't you say that you were going to find out the whereabouts of the life breaker after returning to the capital? Where do you plan to find out?" Jing Chen's attention was indeed diverted by her. He answered truthfully, "Master said that the great advice of the Celestial Commissioner in the capital knows my background. He wants me to see him first when I return to the capital. Xiaoyu, do you know where the Celestial Commissioner is in the capital?" Yu Shu clenched her teeth. This was a title that could make all the people in the world bow their heads in awe, other than Master Yi. Just hearing it in one's ears was enough to make one feel intimidated. "I know the way to the Celestial Commissioner." Yu Shu looked at Jing Chen worriedly and hesitated, "But if you go there so rashly, will..." Seeing her stuttering, Jing Chen asked in confusion, "Could it be what?" Yu Shu suddenly got up from the stool. She rubbed her fists and paced back and forth in front of him a few times. She turned around and stopped. Finally, she could not help but speak out her doubts these days. "I want to talk about you being killed on the road. Didn't you say that the imperial family sent someone to pick you up? But you were seriously injured and abandoned in the river. Not only did you almost lose your life, but you were also buried with silver needles. You lost your memory and lost your voice. Until now you still can't remember who did this to you. Jing Chen, have you ever thought that the person who ordered this to kill you is most likely in the capital? You suddenly showed up and didn't know the enemy's situation. It's hard to guard against them. What if they secretly killed you again? Hearing this, Jing Chen's expression changed. After a moment of silence, he said helplessly, "It's not that I haven't considered what you've said. I also know that someone has intentionally harmed me, but I can't remember that part of it. I don't know who did it. Moreover, even if I remember, I might not know who ordered it." "Xiao Yu, do you understand what I mean?" Of course Yu Shu understood. Jing Chen was the son of Ez He and the princess. He was a relative of the imperial family. No matter who wanted to kill him, they would not easily reveal themselves. When he recovered his memory, he could at most remember a few faces. However, Jing Chen lived in the mountains all year round. This was the first time he left the mountains, so how could he recognize who was who? In my opinion, it's better if you don't show up rashly. The last time you left, you didn't even finish drinking the medicine. The reason why your memory is incomplete must be because of this. Why don't I go back and ask Godfather and let you drink some medicine for a few days to see if it can help you recover? How much can you remember? If there are any clues, it will be easier to find the person who harmed you in the future. Otherwise, if the other party knows that you are safe and sound, they will definitely think of ways to harm you again. Yu Shu was no stranger to having her life on the line. When Bai Qing and Qiu Biao found her in the capital, they had been bent on killing her. During that time, she had been living in fear as if there was a knife on her back. It was only when she saw the two people being beheaded in public that she was able to rest easy. Now that Jing Chen was in the same situation, she could empathize with him. She was afraid that he would be in danger again, so she had to consider everything carefully. That's good too. I'll stay for a few days and make plans later. Jing Chen accepted Yu Shu's suggestion. He left the sect and went to the capital to experience life and death alone. She was the only person he trusted. The two discussed for a while more. Yu Shu decided to go back and ask Dr. He for the prescription. She left the food box behind and said a few words to Jing Chen before he walked her to the door. Yu Shu peeked through the gap in the door to make sure no one was outside. She opened the door and went out. When she turned around to close the door, Jing Chen stopped her with one hand. "Xiao Yu." Yu Shu raised her head and saw Jing Chen. His eyes were as clear as ever and they were filled with trust. It was a purity that she had never seen in anyone else. Such a clean gaze calmed her heart. "Thank you." Hearing these two words, Yu Shu's mouth twitched. She reached out and punched him in the chest. "What are you thanking me for? I'm leaving." Chapter 279. Reporting to your lordship and young miss, this lowly one went to Wangji Tower in the morning to deliver the money. After that, I kept an eye on the area nearby and saw Miss Yu, who has been living in the estate recently, come out from the back door in a sedan chair. She went to the south of the city and entered a small courtyard on a street called Huixing Street. She stayed for a short while before leaving. This lowly one watched Miss Yu leave and asked this lowly one to report back. Ji Huaishan and Ji Xingxuan sat in the tea room in the front courtyard, listening to the reports of the servants they had sent out that morning. Ji Xingxuan thought for a moment, then asked, "Did you see her interacting with anyone else, or did she take anything?" "I didn't see anyone else." The door of the small courtyard was also locked. "Oh, that's right, she seemed to be carrying a food box. It was there when she went in, but it was gone when she came out." Ji Xingxuan's eyes flashed and she turned to Ji Huaishan and said, "Grandfather, this matter is strange. I did see Yu Shu and the Daozi in the portrait when I was at the strange cloud temple in the south of the city. I can't be wrong. Moreover, I asked someone to inquire about her neighbors. When Yu Shu lived on Huixing Street, there were 4 people living under the same roof. After Xia Jiangmin left, there were 3 more. Not counting the 2 siblings, the remaining one must be the Daozi that the emperor is looking for." Waving his hand to dismiss the servant, Ji Huaishan frowned. "From the information I learned from the Celestial Commissioner, the Daozi doesn't seem to know his identity, so he entered the capital and didn't return. That last probably doesn't know who he is, so she hasn't returned until now. This is her good luck. She can always make friends with a few noble people." Ji Xingxuan lowered her eyelids and gently rubbed a copper coin with her fingers. She said, "She is indeed quite fated with noble people. First it was Daozi Qingzheng, then the eldest son of the Shui family, and now she is friends with the Daozi. Who would have thought that a concubine in the 3rd uncle's branch would have such good luck? She is malicious to our Ji family, so we can't recruit her. Instead, she becomes a thorn in our side." Ji Huaishan narrowed his eyes and a cold expression flashed across his face. His white beard trembled and he slowly said, "Today the Celestial Commissioner just posted a notice, but it hasn't spread in a few places in the north of the city. Presumably she still doesn't know. Finding the Daozi is a meritorious deed. If that girl takes advantage of him, then our Ji family won't have anything to do with it. Looking at the situation, this Daozi has a close friendship with her. If he really returns to the imperial court, she will have one more person to rely on. No matter what, this is not appropriate. Xingxuan, in your opinion, what should we do about this matter? Ji Xingxuan pondered with rapt attention. A moment later she raised her head and said, "We still can't determine where the Daozi is right now. If we rashly go looking for him, we may end up making a fool of ourselves by trying to be clever and end up becoming enemies with the Daozi. In grandson's opinion, rather than chasing after the merit, it is better to seize the first opportunity. Yushu doesn't know that I have seen the Daozi, so she is defenseless. Even if she sees the notice, she won't be able to report it. Grandfather will hurry over to the Celestial Commissioner and report to the junior supervisor. There is no need to mention the Daozi's whereabouts. As long as we mention Yushu's name and make people think that she is hiding the Daozi, the junior supervisor will naturally send people to arrest her. Regardless of whether she confesses the Daozi's whereabouts or not, she will be accused of having ulterior motives. Grandfather, you also said that the Daozi is a member of the imperial family. This time he suddenly returned to the capital. There is no telling how many secrets are hidden. The imperial family is also very suspicious. Even if she has a mouth, she won't be able to explain herself. How can she find the Daozi's meritorious deed? On the contrary, grandfather will be in a good position in front of the junior supervisor. Ji Huaishan's face suddenly brightened. When he smiled, more than 10 wrinkles appeared on his eyes. Rather than chasing after the merit, it is better to seize the first opportunity. Xin'er's plan is very clever. Ji Xingxuan sighed softly and squeezed the copper coins in her sleeves. Her expression was indifferent. It is not that I have the intention to scheme against her. In reality, she and our Ji family are not on good terms. We cannot let her be. When Ji Huaishan heard her talking to herself, he only glanced at her for a moment before calling for the steward to prepare a carriage. He also ordered people to keep an eye on Yushu's movements and report to him at any time. He then hurried over to the Celestial Commissioner's residence. Zhao Hui's residence was in the east of the city. In order to save time, the two sedan bearers chose a small path along the way to Zhao Hui's house. Yushu's back was aching as she got off the sedan chair. She took out a piece of silver and asked someone to wait at the door. She then went forward to knock on the door. The person who answered the door was Shen Ma, who was collecting blankets in the front yard. When she saw that it was Yushu, she quickly let her in. As soon as Yushu entered the door, she asked, "Shen Ma, is my godfather at home right now?" Shen Ma replied, "Master went out this morning and hasn't returned yet. Madam and young master are in the backyard. They were talking about you during lunch. They said that they would come yesterday but you didn't. They must be happy to see you now. Come in quickly." Yushu's main purpose was to find He Fangji to ask about Jing Chen's amnesia. When she heard that he wasn't at home, she wanted to go inside and greet Zhao Hui before going to find He Fangji. When she arrived at the backyard, Shen Ma lifted the curtain. When Yushu entered, she saw that the room was warmly lit. The window was open, and Zhao Hui was sitting on a short couch with her legs curled up. There was an embroidery basket on her knees, and she was holding baby toys in her hands. There was a smile at the corner of her mouth. Yu Xiaoxiu was lying on a short table by her feet, seriously writing. The little maid Yun Do was raising a needle and threading it. The scene was calm and peaceful, and it touched a corner of her heart called home. "Mother Xiaoxiu." Yushu called out, her voice unconsciously becoming gentle. Zhao Hui raised her head and saw Yushu standing at the door. She hurriedly put down the little shoes and socks in her hands and waved at her with a smile. "Why are you back now? Come and sit." "Sister." Yu Xiaoxiu put down the brush and moved in front of Yushu. He reached out and pulled her. "Yesterday I waited for you until evening, but you didn't come to pick me up. Later someone came and said that you had something to do. What's the matter?" "Oh, mother's body wasn't feeling well yesterday. I didn't come because I saw that she wasn't feeling well." Yushu casually found an excuse. She touched Yu Xiaoxiu's head and stood at the door without moving. She said to Zhao Hui, "Last night I caught a cold and have some symptoms. I don't want my illness to spread to you, so I won't go in. Where's father? I have some matters to discuss with him." "Your godfather didn't come back from the medical center." Zhao Hui frowned and said worriedly, "How did you catch a cold? You didn't take care of your body and your voice is so hoarse. Where else is she feeling unwell?" "Yun Do, take out a cloak and put it on for her." "It's not a big deal. My throat just hurts. I'll go find godfather later and he can take a look at me." Yu Shu obediently took the cloak from the maid and put it on. She said that she was going to leave. Zhao Hui didn't stop her and asked Yu Xiaoxiu to send her to the door. The siblings stood under the eaves and talked. Xiaoxiu, you have to go to school at the academy tomorrow. I may not be able to leave these 2 days. If I'm free tomorrow, I'll pick you up in the morning and we'll meet academician Song together. If not, you can go by yourself first, okay? Yu Xiaoxiu nodded sensibly and told her to take care of her body. He looked at her reluctantly as she got into the sedan chair and left. He went back to his room and wrote a few more words. Then he heard Mother Shin come in to report that young Master Chao had come to look for him. It was inconvenient for Zhao Hui to receive guests, so she asked Yu Xiaoxiu to go to the front to see what was going on. As soon as Yu Xiaoxiu arrived at the front yard, he saw Shui Rui standing in the living room with his hands behind his back, pacing back and forth. His embroidered clothes and jade crown were out of place in this simple room. Brother Shui, why are you here? Shui Rui turned around and looked at Yu Xiaoxiu asking, did your sister come here just now? Yes, she came and then left. Shui Rui asked, did she say where she went? Yu Xiaoxiu answered honestly, oh, she said she went to the medical center to see Uncle He. She's not feeling well. After finding out where Yu Shu went and the location of the medical center, Shui Rui said goodbye to Yu Xiaoxiu and left in a hurry. In the morning, he saw the notice in the north of the city and recognized that the person in the portrait was Jing Chen. He first went back to the mansion to see Shui Lingnan and asked about the situation. He didn't rest for long before he went back to Wangji Lu to find Yu Shu. He wanted to discuss Jing Chen with her, but he didn't expect to come back empty-handed. He thought she went back to the Ji family, so he went to the right magistrate's mansion and ordered the servants to ask around. Yu Shu didn't come back and finally found this place. Originally, Shui Rui wouldn't be in such a hurry to find her. However, before the new year, Jing Chen suddenly disappeared and Yu Shu went out to find him in the snow. When she was unconscious in bed, he heard from Zhao Hui that Jing Chen was murdered and lost his memory. In this way the matter became serious. Jing Chen was the descendant of Yun Huai and the princess. He was a member of the imperial family and was the daozi that the emperor ordered to find. If something happened to him, it would inevitably involve Yu Shu. Moreover, there were many people who had seen Jing Chen. It was hard to guarantee that no one in the know would see the Celestial Commissioner's notice and think of him. From there they could trace it back to Yu Shu. It would be fine if she could find the daozi, but if Yu Shu didn't know the whereabouts of Jing Chen, then she would be in trouble. Separated by Qinyuan Avenue, the news of the daozi entering the world had not spread to the south of the city. When Yu Shu found He Fangji in Huiran Medical Hall, He was busy setting the bones of a patient who had broken his leg. The small consultation room was crowded with people who wanted to watch the show, and the sound of the family members crying could be heard. Huiran Medical Hall also opened yesterday. Because it happened to be the opening day of Wangji Building, Yu Shu couldn't be there. However, on the 14th day she had already congratulated He Fangji and sent 2 pots of asparagus as a congratulatory gift. They were placed in the medical hall to match the feng shui. She saw them the moment she entered the door. He Fangji couldn't leave for a while, so Yu Shu could only wait outside. The shopkeeper recognized her and knew that she was the boss's daughter, so he hurriedly let her sit inside the counter. Taking advantage of the chaos, he poured her a cup of tea and asked her to sit and wait. Who knew that she would wait for more than half an hour? The sun set and the people who were watching the show dispersed. He Fangji wiped his sweat with a handkerchief and walked out of the inner hall, panting. Seeing that he was so tired, Yu Shu quickly got up, handed him a cup of tea and gave him a seat. After He Fangji recovered, he waved at her. What's wrong with you? You don't look well. Is it a cold or a fever? Come here and let me have a look. Yu Shu leaned against the counter, stretched out her wrist to him and asked, Godfather, can I ask you something? He Fangji put his fingers on her pulse, closed his eyes and said, What? Yu Shu was about to ask him about the prescription Jing Chen took last time when she suddenly heard a commotion in front of the medical hall. She turned her head and saw that several horses stopped outside the door. 7 or 8 officials in jujube clothes with machetes on their waists dismounted and rushed in aggressively. The leader was a middle-aged man with a pair of thick eyebrows. Next to him was a servant wearing a cloth hat. The 2 stood in front of the door and said, Is it here? Chapter 280. A group of officials suddenly appeared outside the clinic. Seeing this, He Fangji hurriedly walked around the counter and saluted, Greetings, Darren. May I know what business Darren has here? The middle-aged man leading the group coldly looked around the clinic, and his eyes finally fell on Yu Shu who was standing behind the counter. He sternly asked, "Which one of you is Yu Shu?" Yu Shu was startled. She was surprised. "Why are they looking for me?" Before she could react, the servant leading the way pointed at her and loudly said, "Reporting to Darren, this is Yu Shu." The middle-aged official wearing a black veil didn't say anything and waved his hand, "Take her away." Following that, some officials came forward to take them away. He Fangji turned pale with fright and tried to stop them, but she was pushed to the ground. Yu Shu was startled by this sudden turn of events. In a daze, she was dragged out by two officials and escorted out the door. "Xiao Yu. What are you doing? Don't pull me." As soon as Yu Shu reacted, she struggled with all her might. This wasn't a joke. She didn't even know where these officials came from. She could tell that they didn't come with good intentions and looked fierce. If she was really taken away by them, she most likely wouldn't have a good ending. He Fangji crawled up from the ground, but she was stopped from going forward. The shopkeeper and the waiter were scared stiff and couldn't move. Yu Shu's strength was no match for two big men. In the blink of an eye, she was dragged to the door. She forced herself to calm down and didn't show any fear. She turned around and angrily scolded the leader. "Which sect does this Darren belong to? Why are you arresting me for no reason? I am an examinee of this year's Grand Yen examination and have half ascension. Don't you know the law?" Unexpectedly, the middle-aged official didn't see through her bluff. He coldly snorted and ordered, "Gag her mouth and tie her up." After he finished speaking, someone took a piece of cloth and stuffed it into Yu Shu's mouth. They also took a rope to tie her up. Some people gradually gathered outside the clinic, but because of the official's authority, they whispered among themselves and didn't dare to come forward. Right now Yu Shu was both frightened and scared. Her legs kicked wildly, her face was red, and she wanted to spit out the cloth in her mouth. But she was still seriously ill and didn't have enough strength. In 2 or 3 moves, her hands and feet were tied and she was thrown onto the horse's back. The saddle hit her abdomen, causing her to groan in pain. She broke out in a cold sweat and lay weakly on the horse's back. After capturing Yu Shu, the officials did not linger. One by one they mounted their horses. One of them held onto the reins of the horse that Yu Shu had been placed on, waved at the passers-by and left towards the north. In a sedan chair across the street, Ji Xingxuan coldly looked at this scene. She put down the curtain and ordered outside the sedan chair, "Go to Huixing Street in the south of the city." Not long after, Shui Rui arrived. When he heard the people on the street talking, he knew that something was wrong. He quickened his pace and entered the Huiran Medical Center. He didn't see He Fangji and Yu Shu. However, he asked the panic-stricken shopkeeper and learned that Yu Shu had been taken away by the government and that He Fangji had gone to the Taihing Chamber of Commerce to seek help from Beijing. His face immediately changed. He was a step too late. Shui Rui was secretly annoyed. He clenched his left hand into a fist and slammed it heavily on the counter next to him. Bang! Damn it! Who was it? How could they be so fast? Yu Shu was carried by the horse all the way. She didn't know where she had been taken. At first, she still had some strength to look up, but in the end, she wanted to vomit as soon as she opened her eyes. Knowing that there was nothing she could do, she had to accept her fate and lie on the ground. Her whole body was aching and her mind was spinning thousands of times. She racked her brains to think why she had been caught by the government. First of all, the officer had pointed out her name to arrest her. It wasn't that he had mistaken her for someone else, which meant that he was after her. Secondly, someone was leading the way. Yu Shu recalled the person who had pointed out her at the entrance of the clinic. She didn't recognize him. However, not only did the other party recognize her, but they could also lead the officials to the Huiran Medical Center. It was clear that they knew her whereabouts, which made her feel even more strange. She vaguely remembered that when the little man who looked like a servant entered the door, he said, "I saw her enter this medical center." What did this mean? It meant that the group of officials didn't go to Zhao Hui's house to ask about her whereabouts, but went straight to the medical center. Then she had been targeted long ago? Yu Shu's heart sank. She was almost sure that someone was behind this matter. Who was it? Several people flashed through Yu Shu's mind. She had offended all of them. Last night she had offended 2 of them. One was Commandery Princess Shi Wen, and the other was Ji Xingxuan. Unfortunately, these 2 people were on the same side. Yu Shu had a feeling that no matter why she had been caught by the government, one of these 2 people must have something to do with her. It was just that in this short night, there had been trouble. They were too fast. They could use the officials. She didn't know if they were framing her or using their power to avenge private grievances. Because Yu Shu was thinking, she forgot her physical discomfort for a moment. Until the horse under her slowly slowed down and suddenly stopped. Someone lifted her legs and carried her off the horse, put her on the ground and untied the rope for her feet. It was already dark and the lights in the city were on. Yushu staggered and stood firm. She raised her head dizzily and saw a neat and solemn red brick wall in front of her. The color was dark, and under a vermilion lantern, 3 dark blue doors were closed. More than a dozen guards dressed in jujube robes with long sabers on their waists were stationed at the door. On the high door, there was a black stone plaque with the words, Celestial Commissioner written in gold. It was full of vigor and shone in the night, dazzling her eyes. This was the Celestial Commissioner? The middle-aged official ordered 2 officers to carry Yushu, who was light-headed and light-footed. He took the lantern handed by the person in front of the door and dispersed the rest of the people. He took her through the archway at the west corner. The Celestial Commissioner was quiet and eerie. The eaves and buildings were covered with smoke, and the glazed tiles and carved beams were covered with mist. Yushu was half-dragged and half-dragged forward. Her mouth was stuffed with something and she couldn't speak. She couldn't tell the directions along the way. She passed through 3 or 4 corridors and stopped in front of an attic after turning a corner of a thicket. The middle-aged official stepped forward and cupped his hands. He said to the guard at the door, "This subordinate is Wang Yang. I have brought the person back as ordered." "Wait a moment." A guard entered and came out after a moment. He looked at Yushu who was being held and moved sideways to let the door open. He waved to the middle-aged official, "Bring her in." Yushu lowered her head and listened to the conversation between them. She was shocked. Junior supervisor? Was it the junior supervisor of the Celestial Commissioner? According to Yushu's knowledge, there were more than 100 officials in the Celestial Commissioner's office with official titles and titles. Under the senior supervisor, the first person was the junior supervisor, followed by the left and right magistrates, and then the left and right magistrates. The left was the highest, and the right was the reinstated position. Therefore, the person she was about to meet now was someone 4 ranks higher than that old bastard from the Ji family. Surprised and bewildered, Yushu's mind flashed with a glimmer of light. Yu somewhat realized why she had been brought here. Jing Chen. They were here for Jing Chen. "Young miss, we've arrived at Huaxing Street." He rolled up the curtain of the sedan and helped Ji Xingxuan out of the sedan. She had the sedan bearers wait by the roadside while the master and servant walked towards an alley in the middle of the street. It was currently evening. He held a lantern in her hand and illuminated the uneven path. She counted the doors and stopped in front of one. He raised the lantern and shone it on the door. When she saw the lock, she turned to Ji Xingxuan and whispered, "Young miss, the door is locked." Ji Xingxuan closed her eyes and whispered, "Knock on the door and call Miss Yu." "Yes." Although he didn't understand her intentions, she still obediently knocked on the door. "Knock knock." Miss Yu, are you there?" "Miss Yu." He knocked for a while but there was no response. She turned her head and whispered, "Young miss, there's no one." Ji Xingxuan whispered, "Continue knocking and shout louder." "Is Miss Yu there?" "Miss Yu." He knocked on the door a few more times but didn't call out the person inside. Instead, she called out the neighbor across the street. "Who are you looking for?" Auntie Sue, who lived across the street, opened the door halfway and poked her head out to look. He was hesitating on what to say when she heard Ji Xingxuan say, "Auntie, did you see anyone coming back from this household during the day?" "No, they moved away a long time ago." Auntie Sue saw that it was 2 young girls dressed in silk and satin, so she asked curiously, "Young miss, why are you looking for them?" Ji Xingxuan tilted her head to look at the tightly shut door behind her and said in a clear voice, "It's like this. Miss Yu, who used to live here, is currently staying at my house. However, she hasn't come back for the past 2 days, so I'm very worried. This afternoon, I heard that someone saw her being taken away on the street by the officials. I don't know if it's true or not, but I couldn't find her anywhere else. I'm afraid that something might have happened to her, so I came here. I'll have to trouble Auntie to help me keep an eye out for her when she comes back. I'll come back tomorrow." Auntie Sue made an sound and said with a strange look in her eyes, But this household doesn't have a girl. There are 2 people with the surname Yu and they're brothers. Which one are you talking about?" Ji Xingxuan said, "Her name is Yushu. Is there no such person?" Auntie Sue's eyes widened in disbelief. Yushu is a girl?" Ji Xingxuan nodded and didn't say anything more. She glanced at the crack in the door again and left with Yunhee. Auntie Sue muttered as she retreated back home. She closed the door and went to talk to her husband about this strange matter. It turned out that the young man who lived next door for a long time was actually a girl. The master and servant had almost reached the entrance of the alley when Yunhee asked in confusion, "Young miss, just now you, Ji Xingxuan softly shushed her and interrupted her. She paused at the entrance of the alley for a moment and was about to walk away when she heard a voice behind her. Please wait. Under the veil, Ji Xingxuan's lips curved up slightly. She turned around and saw a figure walking towards her from the dark alley. In the blink of an eye, the figure appeared in front of her. A handsome face that seemed familiar appeared in the dim light. Her eyes flashed and she recognized the young man in front of her. He was the one she had met once at Qian Monastery. As she expected, he was here. You. When Jing Qin saw the woman at the entrance of the alley, his eyes flashed and his voice paused before he asked, "Who are you?" He had overheard their conversation from inside the door and was worried about Yu Shu's situation, so he jumped over the wall and chased after them. Hearing his question, Ji Xingxuan frowned. And who are you? Chapter 281. I'm Xiao Yu's friend. Ji Xingxuan's face was half-veiled, so her expression was not obvious. Since you're a friend, have you seen her these past 2 days? Jing Qin had just seen Yu Shu during the day. She said that she was going to find Dr. He to ask about his illness, but she had not returned. Earlier in the courtyard, he had heard the conversation between Ji Xingxuan and Auntie Su outside the door. He assumed that something had happened to Yu Shu and that this person in front of him knew about it. He asked, "She came here this afternoon. You said that she was taken away by the government. What happened?" Ji Xingxuan knew that this man in front of her was the Daozi that the Celestial Commissioner was looking for. She had come here to try her luck, but she had coincidentally bumped into him. Judging by his expression, he did not know about the announcement that had been made this morning. She immediately thought of something and said, "My surname is Ji and I'm considered a relative of Yu Shu. For some reason she was temporarily staying at my house as a guest. She didn't return last night and there was no news from her. It was really worrying, so my family sent people out to look for her. I heard that she was taken away by the government this afternoon. I don't know if this is true or not. I knew that she had stayed here before, so I came here in case she didn't return to our house." Hearing this, Jing Qin frowned. He had actually seen the woman in front of him twice. The first time was at the Taoist temple outside the city, and the second time was to retrieve the adversity blocking stone. Before this, Yu Shu had not mentioned her, so he did not know who she was. Now, it seemed that she was from the family that had bullied Yu Shu. His good impression of her immediately disappeared. However, he had always been a person of few desires, so he did not show his emotions. His expression did not change, but his voice became colder. "You said that she was taken away in the south of the city?" Ji Xingxuan was a very meticulous person. As soon as she introduced herself, she noticed the slight change in Jing Chen's attitude. She knew that Yu Shu must have damaged the Ji family in front of him. If that was the case, it would be difficult to build a good relationship with this Daozi. After giving it some thought, Ji Xingxuan decided to take Yu Shu away from this place to avoid the Celestial Commissioner's interrogation. She said, "I am not sure. My grandfather has sent someone to the Yamen to gather information. If young master is worried about Yu Shu, why don't you come with me?" Jing Qin did not know where Yu Shu had gone. Now he could only ask what was in front of him. After thinking for a moment, he held the rusted sword in his hand and nodded, "Thank you." Seeing that things were going smoothly, Ji Xingxuan asked Yun He to send away the sedan bearers. She walked leisurely with Jing Qin back to the right magistrate's residence. Along the way she tried to sound him out with words. However, Jing Qin did not know the ways of the world. He was not happy and did not even respond. Ji Xingxuan realized that Yu Shu was trying to slander him. What she did not know was that Yu Shu had not even mentioned her name in front of Jing Qin. Yu Shu was brought to the imperial astronomer and sent into a loft with her hands tied behind her back. There was a brightly lit hall in front of her. Without going into the details of the furnishings, she saw a long 8 trigrams evil suppression desk on the east side. Behind the desk sat a man in his 30s. He was dressed in black silk and had silvery white hair. His appearance was extraordinary, but his expression was cold and dignified. At first he was still writing with meticulous brushwork, but when Yu Shu arrived in front of him, he put down his brush and looked up. Yu Shu met the man's eyes. She knew that this was the Celestial Commissioner's junior supervisor. Even in this situation she could not help but sigh. Hearing about him was not as good as meeting him in person. She immediately lowered her head, avoiding eye contact. "Your Excellency, this is the man." The middle-aged official who was sent to capture Yu Shu bowed. After scanning Yu Shu's messy hair and clothes, Ren Qiming picked up the announcement on the desk with his left hand and passed it to the attendant behind him. "Show it to her." "Yes." The attendant took the announcement and unfolded it in front of Yushu. Puzzled, Yushu lowered her head to look at the portrait on the announcement. Her expression changed slightly. She read the content of the announcement in detail. Not only did it reveal Jing Chen's identity to the world, but it also ordered a reward for finding him. Her heart sank. She immediately confirmed her guess when she entered the room. The Celestial Commissioner was here for Jing Chen. Confused, she looked down and saw the date at the end of the announcement, after the 15th of the first month. According to this announcement was only posted today. This detail made Yushu suspicious. It was not strange that the Celestial Commissioner would come to find her. Although Jing Chen seldom went out with her, more than one person had seen him. It was normal for someone to see this announcement and report it to the government for the reward. However, it had only been a day since the announcement. It seemed that the news had not spread in the city yet. Otherwise, she would have heard about it after running around the city for half a day. She could count all the people who had seen Jing Chen with her. Auntie Su and her family, Zhou Fangfang, and a few other neighbors. They were illiterate, so how could they understand the content of the announcement? They might not think that the man in the portrait was Jing Chen. If they really reported it to the government, it would take at least 3 to 5 days for it to happen. Then there were Zhao Hui and her husband, Pei Jing, and several servants. If she thought about it with her toes, it was impossible for them to inform the government behind her back. The last one was Shui Rui, and Yushu directly eliminated him. With her understanding of the eldest young Master Shui's character, if he saw this notice, he would surely look for her first and tell her about it. Why would he covet any rewards from this notice, let alone betray her? Then who could it be? Who else would be with Jing Chen and keep an eye on her? Who could take the Celestial Commissioner's men to the clinic to get her if something happened? Yushu thought about it quietly and thought of a person, or rather, a family. Ji Xingxuan, the Ji family. Thinking of this, it made sense. As the right judge of the Celestial Commissioner, Ji Huaishan must have got the news of looking for the so-called Taoist. Ji Xingxuan knew her residence on Huixing Street and went to find her in person. Maybe Ji Xingxuan had seen her and Jing Chen together when she didn't know. This woman was good at physiognomy, and Jing Chen was easy to recognize. Therefore, when she saw the announcement, she thought of her. Ji Xingxuan had seen her last night and knew that she went in and out of Wangji building. She knew her whereabouts like the back of her hand, so it was not a problem to send someone to follow her. The servant who identified her in Huiran Medical Center must have been sent by the Ji family to follow her. Yushu looked at the announcement. There was no mention of the evil chi of Kata Star. Instead, she addressed Jing Chen as Taoist. She also said that Jing Chen joined Taoism when he was young and inherited his parents' will. These beautiful words all showed that the royal family's attitude towards Jing Chen was friendly and valued. Since the Ji family found out that Jing Chen was in contact with her, and they knew that Jing Chen had a high status, they were afraid that she would take credit for finding the Taoist in the future. So they made a move first to gain the upper hand. Somehow they fooled their superiors and made the young eunuch send someone to catch her. In this way, if she honestly told the whereabouts of Jing Chen, she would be betraying Jing Chen in a disguised way. If she refused to tell, she would be in trouble. Not only would she not get any benefits, but she would also be trapped. However, Jing Chen was missing a piece of memory. He didn't know who wanted to harm him, so he would be in danger as soon as he showed up. As a senior actuary, Yushu was best at information calculation and analysis. Although she didn't know what was going on, she was able to sort out the clues that she already knew, and she was able to guess what had happened. Yushu's mouth was blocked. She could only curse in her heart, this wicked Ji family. Do you recognize the person in this portrait? Ren Qiming quietly observed the changes in Yushu's expression. Seeing that she finished reading the notice and didn't move for a long time, he asked. The attendant pulled out the cloth from Yushu's mouth. Yushu coughed hard for a while and spat out 2 mouthfuls of saliva. She took a deep breath and made up her mind. Then she raised her head and looked at the big man behind the desk who could kill her with one hand. She said in a hoarse voice, "I don't recognize him." Ren Qiming frowned. Finding Yun Hua and the princess's son was a very important matter. The Great Commissioner had told him to handle it personally and not let others handle it. That was why Right Judge Ji came to see him in a hurry. He said that the servants in the mansion had seen the notice and saw Dawish child going in and out with someone. The description was very similar, so he sent his subordinates to bring the person back. Now that he was interrogating him personally, he wanted to avoid any mistakes. At this time, he saw Yushu's strange expression and concluded that she was hiding something. So he said coldly, "Since you have seen the notice, you should know who is in this portrait. Someone has seen you going in and out with Dawish child." Why do you say you don't know? Yushu's throat was blocked with phlegm. She felt dry and wretched. When she heard the junior supervisor's question, her neck stiffened and she couldn't answer. The middle-aged subordinate felt that she was being negligent. He snorted and kicked her in the back of the leg. She knelt down. Yushu's ears were numb and she cried out in pain, "Ah! The junior supervisor is questioning you. Don't hesitate and answer honestly." "Wang Yang," Ren Qiming said coldly, "leave." "Yes, sir." The middle-aged subordinate excused himself and bowed before leaving. At this time only Ren Qiming, Yushu, and the attendant were left in the building. "Your surname is Yu and you were born in Jiangnan. You were the concubine of the third son of the Celestial Commissioner, right, Judge Ji Huaishan? You were an examinee of the Deyen examination last year, right?" Ren Qiming held a report in his hand. It was just delivered to him along with Yushu. After listening to Ji Huaishan's report, he sent people to arrest her and also sent people to several places to inquire about this girl's situation to verify. In addition, you have a foster relative with the surname He who moved here from the south. You have a weak younger brother who moved to the He family in the 12th month of last year. At that time he was accompanied by a young man. Later he disappeared. Let me ask you, who is that man? And where is he now? Yushu bit her lips. She propped up her upper body and kneeled on the ground. Cold sweat appeared on her forehead and her shoulders trembled slightly. She said in a hoarse voice, "That is a friend who is staying at my house. I don't know where he went. As for the person in the painting, even if you ask him 1,000 times, I don't know him." Yushu's heart was heavy. The Ji family probably knew that she went to Huixing Street in the afternoon since they sent people to follow her. Jing Chen was now waiting for her in the small courtyard. He was completely unaware of the news outside and had nowhere to hide. It was only a matter of time before he was found. She wasn't stupid enough to think that if she didn't say Jing Chen's whereabouts, the Celestial Commissioner wouldn't be able to find him. But she couldn't say it. At least she couldn't say it now. Once she said it, she would fall into the Ji family's trap and wouldn't be able to get out. Now that she had one foot in the swamp, she had to find a way to pull herself out. "In front of me you dare to lie." Ren Qiming was a strict man. He had always been cold and serious. He was sure that Yushu was hiding the whereabouts of the Daozi. He asked her again and again. Seeing that she was unwilling to say it, he lost his patience. He put down the report in his hand and put his hands on the table. He said, "Qing Feng, let her speak." However, he remembered Yushu's reminder and did not respond. Instead, he frowned and said, "You've got the wrong person. I'm here to look for someone. Do you know where Yushu is now?" "That's impossible. You're clearly the same as the one in the portrait." Ji Huaishan had a look of disbelief. He turned his head and ordered the steward, "Go and bring me the announcement on the table in my study." "Yes, Your Excellency." Ji Xingxuan had a puzzled expression and said doubtfully, "Grandfather, what's wrong with you? This young master is Yushu's friend. How did he become the descendant of Yinhua Yizi?" Ji Huaishan shook his head and ignored her. He cupped his hands at Jing Chen and said, "Young master, please don't be impatient. Let this old man verify something and then tell me where Yushu is." Jing Chen looked at the grandfather and grandson in front of him. He was puzzled and nodded. A moment later, the steward ran back with a scroll and gave it to Ji Huaishan. He handed it to Jing Chen. "Young master, look. This is the announcement that the emperor ordered to be posted in the city this morning." Jing Chen took it in his hands and looked at it. He saw the portrait and the document and suddenly realized that the imperial family had ordered to find him. No wonder he had never seen the old man in front of him, but the other party recognized him. Then a servant was brought in front of them. Ji Huaishan pointed at Jing Chen and asked, "Lai San, you said that you saw Miss Yu and the person in the portrait together. Are you talking about this young master?" The servant with small eyes looked at Jing Chen and nodded vigorously, Yes, it's him. Last year in the 12th month, when I went to the south of the city to visit the bride, I saw this young master together with Miss Yu who is currently living in our estate." When Jing Chen heard this, he seemed to understand something and raised his head to look at Ji Huaishan. However, before he could ask, Ji Huaishan sighed and then cupped his hands at Jing Chen and said, "This old man is the Celestial Commissioner, right, Magistrate Ji Huaishan? May I ask if young master is a cultivator from Mount Longhu? If you are, then you are undoubtedly the descendant of Master Yi that the Emperor has ordered to find. To tell you the truth, His Majesty is in a hurry to summon you back to the Imperial Court. Everyone in the Imperial Astronomer's office has received the order. Because this old servant was certain that he had seen you and Yushu together, I was unable to find her. In a moment of desperation, I went to the Imperial Astronomer's office during the day and reported to my superior. Presumably, that child Yushu has already been brought to the Imperial Astronomer's office for interrogation. Jing Chen was shocked, but then he heard Ji Xingxuan say in surprise, "Grandfather, why is it like this? Didn't you say that you sent someone to find Miss Yu, but there was no news?" Ji Huaishan sighed, "How can this old man tell a child about such an important matter?" Then he said to Jing Chen with a complicated expression, "If Daozi is worried about Miss Yu, then come with this old man to the Celestial Commissioner's residence. There's no time to lose. I'm afraid that if we're late, Miss Yu will suffer." Since Jing Chen knew where Yushu had gone, he didn't have the heart to think about other things. He was only worried about her safety. He was afraid that she would refuse to tell if someone asked about his whereabouts. He made a prompt decision and decided to go with Ji Huaishan to the Celestial Commissioner's residence. He didn't care about exposing his whereabouts at this time and what danger it would bring. "I came from Mount Longhu. Quickly lead the way and take me to the Celestial Commissioner's residence." Hearing this, the grandfather and grandson duo's hearts sank. This was exactly what they had discussed in the back garden. Since they couldn't win Daozi's favor, they also couldn't let him blame their family later. At the very least, they had to get rid of one person, and that person was Ji Xingxuan. The inner room of the Celestial Commissioner's residence was lit by candles. Yushu was lying on the ground, gasping for air. Her forehead was pressed against the cold floor, and cold sweat had soaked the back of her clothes. All of her senses were focused on the broken little finger on her left hand. Her mind was blank and her ears were ringing. Then she heard an ice-cold voice, "I'll ask you again. Do you recognize the person in this portrait?" "I do." She almost subconsciously wanted to answer, but then she came back to her senses and abruptly changed her words. She gritted her teeth and replied in a trembling voice, "No, I don't. Recognize your uncle." Ren Qiming's eyes narrowed. He didn't have the heart to praise this woman's backbone. He was about to let the attendant break another bone in her hand to see how stubborn she was, when he heard a report from outside the door. Darren, the 9th prince, young master Rue, and the young master of the Shui family ask for an audience. They say they have the whereabouts of Daozi. Hearing this, Ren Qiming turned his head to look outside the door. He had a surprised expression on his face. He then glanced at Yushu, who was kneeling on the ground, and said, "Invite them in." Yushu was suffering from the pain of her broken fingers. Her ears were ringing and she didn't hear the announcement. She didn't know that the people who came at this time were just in time, so she was lucky enough not to have another broken finger. Shui Rue, Lu Tan, and Rue Lin were invited in. At first glance, the first thing Shui Rue saw was a figure kneeling on the ground. Her clothes were messy and her upper body was drenched. His body stiffened and he tried to resist the urge to go forward to check on her condition. He secretly clenched his fist and shifted his gaze to the man behind the evil warding case. Rue Lin raised his hand to salute and said in a low voice, "This lowly official greets the junior supervisor." This was the Celestial Commissioner's Ren Qiming. Even his grandfather had to give him some face in front of him. As a junior, he couldn't be disrespectful. When Ren Qiming saw Lu Tan, he stood up and raised his hand to salute. "Greetings, Your Highness." "Sir Ren, you may rise." Lu Tan and Rue Lin were both temporarily pulled here by Shui Rue as reinforcements. On the way, they had heard Shui Rue's explanation. When they saw the scene in front of them, they knew who the person kneeling on the ground was. They weren't confused. Rue Lin immediately smiled and said, "Brother-in-law, why has your place become a yamen? Do you still need to interrogate criminals?" From the way he addressed him, it was obvious that young Lord Rue was Ren Qiming's brother-in-law. If there were people in Anling City who weren't afraid of Junior Supervisor Ren's cold face, he was one of them. Ren Qiming ignored him, but his expression softened a little. He turned to Lu Tan and Shui Rue and said, "Your Highness and Mr. Shui have the whereabouts of Daozi?" Lu Tan said, "It was my cousin who came to find me. He said that he had news of Master Uncle. Coincidentally, I was with Rue Lin, so we came together. Let him tell, sir." "Brother Rue?" When the tinnitus in Yushu's ears subsided a little, she heard a few more voices in the building. They were vaguely familiar. She slowly turned her head and saw a few more pairs of boots on the ground. When she looked up, her vision gradually became clear. She was the first to recognize Shui Rue and was stunned on the spot. "Why is he here?" Before she could wrap her mind around it, she heard Shui Rue's voice, "Sir Ren, I have seen Daozi in person a month ago." Ren Qiming looked serious and said, "Where did you see Daozi? Tell me in detail." Shui Rue's eyes moved. He turned to look at Yushu on the ground and said, "Sir, please untie her first." Ren Qiming frowned. He looked at Shui Rui and then looked at Yushu. Since he knew that they knew each other, he thought that there must be some inside story. After hesitating for a moment, he waved his hand and said, "Release her." The attendant was about to untie Yushu, but Shui Rui was one step ahead of him. He went forward to help Yushu up from the ground and untied her wrists behind her back. As soon as he touched her wrists, he heard her gasp and tremble. He thought that she was injured and hurriedly checked. Soon, he found that one of her little fingers was broken and blood was squeezed together. It was mercilessly twisted. It was a shocking sight. Shui Rui turned pale with fright. He couldn't care less about the anger in his heart. He hurriedly tore off a piece of his sleeve, put her against his chest and held her finger. He felt her body tremble slightly and whispered in her ear, "Bear with it." Yushu seemed to know what he was going to do. She leaned against him numbly. When she heard his voice, she felt a little relieved. The next moment she felt a stinging pain in her brain. She clenched her teeth, trembled violently and collapsed in his arms. Her eyes were wet with sweat. Shui Rui pulled a long face as he straightened Yushu's broken little finger. He removed the hairpin from his head and stuck it on her wrist bone before he quickly wrapped it with a piece of cloth. He lowered his head to look at her ghastly pale complexion, her purple lips and her sweaty face. He felt as if his chest had been hammered, and he also felt a little bitter. Seeing the girl that he had been longing for suffer for another man again and again, this feeling was really not good. Chapter 283. Shui Rui knelt on the ground, hugged Yushu to his chest and treated the injury on her hand. He gently held her trembling left hand with one hand, raised his head and said coldly to Ren Qiming, "Sir Ren, you brought her back to the Celestial Commissioner for interrogation without distinguishing between right and wrong, and you even used private torture. Don't you know that this is a violation of the law?" Upon hearing his questioning, Lu Tan and Ruilin had a strange look on their faces. Both of them knew Shui Rui for more than a day or two. They knew that he was usually dignified, cautious in his words and actions, and always pretended to be gentle and refined. However, his temper was actually the worst. Looking at him now, it was obvious that he was about to fall out. Ren Qiming looked at Shui Rui and said expressionlessly, "I was ordered by the emperor to find the whereabouts of the descendant of Yunhua Yi and Princess Liyue. I received a report and found out that this person had been in contact with Daozi, so I sent someone to bring her back. As for the torture, Mr. Shui, you are being too serious. However, she refused to confess, so I accidentally got someone to break her finger. She can just reattach it when she goes back. How can this be considered violating the law?" Haha. Seeing that the situation was not good, Ruilin quickly jumped out to interrupt. He laughed dryly at Ren Qiming and winked at Shui Rui, "Brother Rui, aren't you going to tell my brother-in-law about Daozi's whereabouts?" Yushu leaned in front of Shui Rui, endured the pain and concentrated on listening to their conversation. When she heard what Ruilin said, her eyelids twitched. She guessed that the Ji family wanted to harm her and had already thought of a plan to deal with it. However, she did not expect that Shui Rui would appear halfway. Obviously, he wanted to protect her and tell them about Jing Qin. Although it was a mess, it could also be regarded as a delaying plan. Sure enough, as soon as Yushu thought about it, she heard Shui Rui say, "Daozi's name is Jing Qin. A month ago he stayed at my sworn sister's house. As far as I know, Daozi used to suffer from amnesia, and I don't know where he came from. Later he recovered his memory and left alone. My sworn sister is also looking for his whereabouts, but she doesn't know where he went. I also sent someone to help her inquire, and I got the news that a few days ago." Hearing this, Yushu suddenly coughed and interrupted him. She said in a hoarse voice, "Brother, don't say." Her stop was heard by several people in the building. Ren Qiming was listening to the key point of Shui Rui's story, but he was stopped by Yushu. His face turned cold, but before he could say anything he heard Shui Rui say in a low voice, "Why don't you say it? You saved Daozi's life, took care of him all the way and worked hard for him without complaint. After he recovered, he left without saying a word. Now you have been wronged and suffered. Why do you still want to cover up for him?" Yushu was stunned when she heard this. She was able to discern that Shui Rui was really angry, and she actually didn't know how to reply for a moment. Her broken pinky felt another wave of pain, and it pierced her to the point her teeth chattered, causing her to grab tightly onto his sleeve and lean her head against his chest. She pressed her forehead against his thick chest, and she gritted her teeth to prevent herself from crying out in pain. Shui Rui noticed her little movement. He knew that she was uncomfortable, but he couldn't replace her. He could only gently tighten his arms, trying to make her feel better. Ren Qiming had been frowning since Shui Rui opened his mouth. He didn't worry about anything else, but he was worried that the news of Daozi's life in Kadastar would be leaked. So at the beginning, when he found that Yu Shu was hiding something, he wanted to deal with her as soon as possible in case she already knew it. But looking at the current situation, the young master of the Shui family seemed to know something, which made it difficult for him to deal with. Looking at Lu Tan and Rui Lin on the side, Ren Qiming thought for a moment and suddenly said, "Rui Lin, there's nothing for you to do here. You go back first." The ninth prince knew some inside information. It didn't matter if he stayed here, but his brother-in-law didn't know, so he couldn't let him get involved. Rui Lin had some insight. Hearing his brother-in-law driving him away, he hesitated for a moment and said to Shui Rui, "Brother Rui, I'll wait for you outside the prison." Then he winked at Lu Tan and turned his head to go out. As soon as he left, Ren Qiming said to Shui Rui with a serious face, "Sir Shui, do you know that His Majesty is worried about Daozi's whereabouts and can't eat or drink? As an official, we must share the burden of the Emperor. If you know anything, please tell us the truth so that we can find Daozi as soon as possible, so that His Majesty won't be overworked. If the dragon body is delayed, you and I can't afford it." These words of persuasion were actually a warning. If Shui Rui hid anything, it would be deceiving the Emperor. "Cousin." Lu Tan called softly, reminding him. Shui Rui's eyes flickered and he said in a low voice, "Daozi seems to have been assassinated on the way. Someone used a poisonous trick in Jianghu. Silver needles were buried in his acupuncture points and he lost his memory. My sworn sister didn't know Daozi's identity. She only took care of him because of her chivalrous heart. My sworn sister has an elder who is proficient in the art of Qi Huang. He diagnosed Daozi's illness and treated him with the needles. However, a few days later, Daozi disappeared in the morning. He must have recovered his memory and left." Yu Shu listened to Shui Rui's narration. Her eyelids moved, she pursed her lips and didn't make a sound. She had never told him about these things, but he knew. When Ren Qiming heard this, he was inwardly shocked. Daozi had been assassinated. Sworn sister was worried that his body hadn't recovered and that he was penniless, so she begged me to send people to search for him. Not long ago, I received a clue that someone in the southern garrison saw Daozi leave the city on the morning of the 22nd day of the 12th month. Sworn sister and I thought that he had left and didn't continue to search. This is all we know. There is absolutely not half a word of falsehood. Darren can send people to investigate." Ren Qiming's complexion was heavy and his hands were clasped tightly together. Looking at Shui Rui's expression, it didn't seem like he was lying. If that was the case, then it was very bad. Therefore he asked in a deep voice, "Since this is the case, she should tell the truth in full detail. Why is it that when I asked her just now, she refused to admit that she had seen Daozi and said that she didn't recognize the person in the portrait?" Upon hearing this, Shui Rui lowered his head to look at Yu Shu. His eyes flickered a few times and he said with disappointment and frustration, "Thinking about it, when Darren Ren interrogated my sworn sister, it wasn't that she didn't want to talk, but that she didn't know where to start. She is a young and fair-skinned girl and was entangled with Daozi. Now that the imperial court is looking for him with great fanfare, if she can't tell you where Daozi went, how can you let her go? If Daozi is injured and you can't find him, won't you blame it all on her?" Hearing Shui Rui trying to defend her, Yu Shu's lips moved and she sighed. She didn't say it not because she was afraid that they wouldn't let her go, but because she didn't want to let some people go. "Come." Ren Qiming suddenly stood up from his chair and called for the imperial bodyguard outside the door. He ordered, "Quickly go and invite the head prefect here." "Yes, sir." The imperial bodyguard obeyed the order and left. Ren Qiming turned to the people in front of him and said solemnly, "This is a serious matter, all of you wait here." Ren Qiming invited the head prefect. Lu Tan didn't do anything. Even though Shui Rui didn't want to stay any longer, he knew he couldn't leave. Therefore he looked around and saw an empty chair under the south window. He carried Yu Shu horizontally and gently placed her on the chair. He then poured a cup of water from the coffee table and fed it to her mouth. Cough cough. Yu Shu was still ill. After this torment, she barely had any breath left. She had no strength to support herself, so her body tilted and leaned on Shui Rui. She muttered, "Thank you." At this moment, Shui Rui wasn't in the mood to avoid arousing suspicion. He put an arm over her shoulder so that she could lean more comfortably. His other hand gently touched her burning forehead. His eyes darkened and he whispered, "Bear with it a little more." Yu Shu closed her eyes and silently agreed. "Yes, bear with it a little more." Lu Tan also found a place to sit. For a moment, there was no sound in the building. Just like this, the time to drink a cup of tea passed. Suddenly there was a voice at the door. Shui Rui and Lu Tan thought that the head prefect had arrived. Unexpectedly, the imperial bodyguard hurriedly entered and reported, "Junior Supervisor Darren, Right Judge G. Darren requests an audience." He also brought a man with him, claiming that he is the Daozi that the emperor ordered to find. It was like a stone that gave rise to 1,000 ripples, and the expressions of the three men in the building went pale. Only Shu, who was leaning on Shui Rui, suddenly opened his bloodshot eyes, and a fierce light flashed within them. It really was this pair of bastards. Ren Qiming and Lu Tan both stood up from their chairs. The former reacted the fastest and hurriedly said, "Quickly let them in." The imperial bodyguard retreated. A moment later, 3 people followed him in. They were Ji Huaishan, Ji Xingxuan, and Jing Qin, who had rushed over from the right judge's office. The people who came in looked at the people in the building, and the people in the building looked at the people who came in. Several gazes intertwined. 7th Martial Uncle. Lu Tan beamed with joy and strode forward to greet them. His voice had undoubtedly confirmed Jing Chen's identity. Ren Qiming stared in Jing Chen's direction and saw his face clearly. His serious face, which was like an iron plate, unexpectedly revealed an excited expression. He was worried about the Daozi's safety and was afraid that something bad would happen. Who would have thought that the situation would take a turn and he would see the people who came? Jing Chen had no one else in his mind. When he saw Yu Shu, he left Lu Tan and quickly walked towards her. Xiao. Jing Chen could see that Yu Shu's condition was not good. He reached out to touch her forehead, but was firmly held by a hand that stretched out from the side. The hand stopped half an inch in front of her forehead and could not move forward. Jing Chen followed the hand and looked at its owner. He saw a frosty face looking at him coldly. The instinct of a martial artist made Jing Chen smell a bit of danger from the other party. Jing Chen frowned slightly and did not compete with him. He lowered his head to look at Yu Shu, but because her dark sleeves covered her, he did not see her broken fingers. He could see that she looked very pale and worried. "Xiaoyu, how are you?" "I'm fine." Cough cough. Yu Shu coughed as soon as she opened her mouth. Shui Rui stroked her back. She took a deep breath and shook her head at Jing Chen. "I'm fine. I won't die." As she spoke, Yu Shu looked at the grandfather and grandson who had come to take advantage of the situation. She took a deep breath and sneered without saying anything. "Daozi," Ren Qiming called out to Jing Chen. Seeing that he did not respond, he turned his head to Ji Huaishan and asked seriously, "Right Judge Ji, what is going on? Where did you find the Daozi?" Chapter 284. Ji Huaishan recounted what had happened. In Yu Shu's ears there was only one meaning: they were the ones who found Jing Chen. Seeing that Jing Chen was safe and sound, Ren Qiming was overjoyed. He couldn't help but treat Ji Huaishan in an amiable manner. His Majesty was anxious because of this matter. Fortunately, the right judicial judge found Daozi. "I will report this to His Excellency Ming and ask for a reward for you." Ji Huaishan smiled. "This subordinate is an internal official of the Supreme Court. I am only doing my duty and dare not claim credit. I am ashamed to say this. If it weren't for my granddaughter being nosy and running off to find him, we wouldn't have coincidentally found Daozi." Hearing this, Ren Qiming looked at Ji Xingxuan. His gaze didn't conceal his admiration. "Xingxuan, I have been busy all year and didn't have the time to ask you. How did you do in the Dian examination this time?" Because Ji Huaishan was the celestial commissioner, he would occasionally bring Ji Xingxuan to the prison. Ren Qiming ran into her a few times. Seeing that this woman was talented and intelligent, he occasionally gave her pointers. He often went to the right judicial judge's residence to drink tea. Every time, Ji Huaishan would call Ji Xingxuan over to greet him. Thus, they weren't strangers to each other. Ji Xingxuan stepped forward and bowed. She answered politely, replying to Your Excellency's question. "I took all 6 subjects. Apart from the mathematics subject, I didn't miss any of the other 5 subjects. Among them, I was more confident in Yi, physiognomy, and astrology. If there are no accidents, I should be able to pass too." When Ren Qiming heard astrology, he secretly frowned. His expression didn't change. Yes, there are more questions in mathematics this year. It stumped many people. Pausing, he looked at her and continued, "You have been studying in the Taisher Library for 3 years. If you are able to become a great E-master this year, this Fu will recommend you to the higher authorities. Next year you can take up a position in the Imperial Censorate. The Imperial Censorate is currently lacking a scribe. Although it is only a 7th-rank scribe, you will be able to learn much better than anywhere else. The selection of officials for the Celestial Commissioner was different. As long as it was approved by the senior supervisor and the junior supervisor, even the emperor wouldn't interfere. It wasn't easy for a woman to become an official. Today, with Ren Qiming's words, Ji Xingxuan would be appointed to the Celestial Commissioner's post. Hearing this, Ji Xingxuan paused. Then, her beautiful eyes brightened. She was overjoyed. Ji Huaishan was even more overjoyed. Fearing that Ren Qiming would take back his words, he hurriedly said, Xingxuan, hurry up and thank the junior supervisor for his appreciation. Xingxuan will not disappoint your excellency. On one side they were giving gifts. On the other side, Yu Shu was watching coldly from the sidelines. Everyone else who witnessed this scene had different thoughts. Shui Rui sneered because he knew a lot of inside information. He could see through this grandfather and granddaughter's ploy. It was nothing more than using a knife to hurt someone and then sitting back and enjoying the fruits of their labor. It was a pity that the little girl in his arms had worked so hard to protect a noble to the capital. In the end, she had made a wedding dress for someone else. She had to suffer in silence and couldn't say anything. Jing Chen looked thoughtfully at the old and young pair who had brought him here. He suddenly said, "Did you know that I was hiding in that small courtyard?" Others might not understand what Jing Chen was saying, but the grandfather and granddaughter of the Ji family understood. Ji Huaishan's smile froze. Ji Xingxuan frowned and asked, "Why do you say that, Taoist?" Jing Chen pointed at her and said suspiciously, "You've seen me before. Last October at the Qiyun Temple in the south of the city. At that time I was with Xiao Yu and you met me. You recognized me. Today you pretended not to know me. You deliberately used Xiao Yu as an excuse to bring me here, didn't you?" Jing Chen was not worldly. However, he was born sensitive and meticulous. He could often sense the changes in people's hearts. That was why he did not hesitate to hand over a treasure like the yellow frost stone to Yu Shu in Yang City. He believed it because he knew it. Reality proved that he did not trust the wrong person. In the future, not only did Yu Shu save his life, but it was also because of her that he could stand here safely today. Shui Rui looked at Jing Chen in surprise. He thought to himself that this person was not stupid. Ren Qiming looked at Ji Xingxuan meaningfully and asked, "Xingxuan, Taoist said that you've seen him before. Is that true?" Ji Xingxuan hesitated for a moment and said in a low voice, "Yes, I've seen Taoist at the Qiyun Temple before." Xingxuan? Ji Huaishan was shocked. He did not understand what she was doing. Shui Rui also looked at Ji Xingxuan strangely. He did not know what trick she was playing. "Grandfather," Ji Xingxuan clenched her hands in front of her abdomen. She smiled bitterly and said, "Did you forget? Last October I accidentally broke your treasured painting of the 9 plum blossoms and was punished by you to copy books at home? Coincidentally you were not in the Fu, so I sneaked out with Yun He. I wanted to admire the plum blossom forest near the Qiyun Temple. When I came back I drew a plum blossom painting to make you happy. I was afraid that you would blame me afterwards, so I did not mention it again. Coincidentally I met Taoist at the temple. Now that I've seen him, how could I recognize him? I could only pretend not to know him. Who would have known that he was the Taoist you were looking for?" This was indeed a coincidence and caused Taoist to misunderstand. This explanation was flawless and immediately dispelled everyone's suspicions. Ji Xingxuan had made it very clear that she had seen Jing Chen before. However, at that time she did not recognize Jing Chen. Today she pretended not to know him because she was afraid of bringing up the matter of her sneaking out. Jing Chen only had suspicions. In the end, there was no evidence to prove that Ji Xingxuan had tricked him to come here. Shui Rui was a little shocked. He thought to himself that this Ji Xingxuan had a deep mind. She was quick-witted and meticulous. She was practically invulnerable. On one hand, he was lucky enough to break off the engagement with the Ji family that day. On the other hand, he was worried for Yu Shu. Now that she had provoked such a difficult character, her days in the future would not be stable. "Are you done?" Yu Shu, who had been resting on Shui Rui's body, suddenly spoke up. Her hissing voice was very attention-grabbing. Ji Xingxuan shifted her gaze and saw a weak-looking Yu Shu holding onto the armrest of the chair. She barely managed to sit up straight. Her pair of reddened eyes stared straight at Ji Xingxuan, making Ji Xingxuan feel a sense of foreboding. "If you're done, it's my turn." Yu Shu didn't care what they thought of her. She retracted her gaze from Ji Xingxuan and shifted it to Junior Eunuch Ren. She held back her cough and slowly said, "Jing Chen and I, the Daozi that you guys call him, met him a year ago in Jiang'anzi Yang City. I was indebted to him, so I felt grateful and befriended him. Last April he suddenly bade farewell to me and left Yang City. I thought that we wouldn't be able to meet again, but who knew that 2 months later when I took a boat north to the capital, I actually met him again. However, at that time he was severely injured and was abandoned in the river. He was fished out of the water as he was on his last breath. He almost lost his life. I recognized him, and in order to repay his kindness, I naturally took good care of him. Who knew that after he woke up, not only did he lose his voice, he also lost his memory. Jingchen, you never lie. Tell them, is there a single lie in what I've said? Most of the people present were flabbergasted when they heard about Jing Chen's thrilling experience. Ren Qiming's expression was the worst, while Lu Tan's expression was one of shock and anger. Ji Huaishan and Ji Xingxuan, on the other hand, didn't expect this. They looked at each other and felt that something was wrong. They had originally thought that Yu Shu and the Daozi were good friends at most. They didn't expect her to be his savior. Jing Chen looked at Yu Shu and said, "It's true. What Xiaoyu said is absolutely true. If she hadn't saved me on the river, I would have become a pile of bones in the river. Later, when we were hijacked, she was the one who helped me escape and saved my life." Ji Huaishan was a sly old fox. Seeing that the situation had changed, he sighed and said, "I didn't expect that the Daozi would have such an experience. You're really lucky. In this way you can be considered to be affectionate and righteous. You know how to repay kindness." He came to play the good guy. With one sentence he minimized Yu Shu's life-saving grace into repaying kindness. Yu Shu knew it in her heart. She secretly sneered. This old thing, did he think that she said all this for this little credit? At this time, Ren Qiming already knew that he had wronged Yu Shu and had her finger broken. There was a little embarrassment on his dark face. He felt guilty in his heart, but he couldn't bring himself to apologize. He said in a stiff tone, "If you had told me the truth from the beginning, I wouldn't have misunderstood. I wouldn't have thought that you had ulterior motives and deliberately concealed the whereabouts of the Daozi." Darren didn't misunderstand. I did deliberately conceal his whereabouts. Yu Shu's words shocked everyone. She noticed that Shui Rui had fallen on her shoulder. Her arm moved. She raised her head and shamefully faced the man who wholeheartedly protected her. "Big brother, I'm sorry. I hid it from you these days. In fact, on the 9th day of the new year, I went out of the city to find Jing Chen and saw him in the woods." In the face of her apology, Shui Rui smiled bitterly. Could he say that he had already guessed it? Yu Shu ignored the other people's attitude. She lowered her head and coughed twice. She continued to say to Ren Qiming, "What happened after we entered the capital is what Big Brother said to you just now. There's nothing wrong. It's just that these 2 days I let Jing Chen hide in the small courtyard in the south of the city. I always knew where he was. When you interrogated me, I deliberately concealed it." Ren Qiming furrowed his eyebrows. "Woman, you didn't report what you knew and hid a Taoist. What is your intention?" "Alas," Yu Shu let out a long sigh. "Darren, didn't you understand? Jing Chen is a member of the royal family and a noble Taoist. He is the descendant of Yun Huai and Princess Luyu. It was the first time he left the mountain. Firstly, he didn't have anything valuable on him. Secondly, he didn't have any enemies in Jianghu. Thirdly, he was highly skilled in martial arts and couldn't be plotted against by small fries. However, he was killed on the way. They used silver needles to make him lose his voice and memory. Before this, I didn't know his identity. I just couldn't figure out who would want to kill him." Yu Shu stopped to catch her breath. Everyone held their breaths in rapt attention. They were afraid that they had misheard the main point. Later on, Jing Chen regained his memory and told me that when he left the mountain this time, someone from the capital came to pick him up. He was framed when he went to the welcoming party. When I heard this, I suddenly realized that the person who wanted to harm him had obviously planned this and was probably hiding in the capital. Unfortunately, he lost his memory and couldn't remember who the killer was. In this kind of situation with so many dangers, how could Jing Chen show himself? Looking at Ren Qiming's changing expression, Yu Shu took a deep breath. She used all her strength and stood up shakily from her chair. She resisted the dizziness and with red eyes, she angrily accused, "Let me ask you, Darren, you captured me to interrogate me and used torture to threaten me. If I wanted to protect myself, I would betray Jing Chen's whereabouts. Isn't this selling a friend for glory? Shameless and cheap. Although I, Yu Shu, am a woman and don't have the backbone of a man, I still know how to write the word righteousness." The sound of chong chong made everyone's ears ring. Her words made people's hearts beat fast. In front of everyone, Yu Shu changed from hiding Daozi's whereabouts with ulterior motives to protecting Daozi's safety in the blink of an eye. No one would doubt her intentions. A strange expression flashed in Shuirui's eyes, and as he looked at Yushu's pale and cold face, he suddenly came to a slight understanding in his heart. Why did she endure patiently and tightly clench her teeth even after her fingers were twisted off? Ji Xingxuan frowned. Unexpectedly, she had set up a series of obstacles, but she still managed to turn the tables. In the end, she still looked down on her. Pa pa pa. Chapter 285. A strange expression flashed in Shuirui's eyes, and as he looked at Yushu's pale and cold face, he suddenly came to a slight understanding in his heart. Why did she endure patiently and tightly clench her teeth even after her fingers were twisted off? Ji Xingxuan frowned. She didn't expect that she would be able to turn the tables on her. She had underestimated her. Clap, clap, clap. A round of applause came from outside the door. No one could be seen, but the laughter was like a spring breeze. Hee hee, what a good righteous. I would like to see such a loyal and affectionate daughter. Yushu turned her head, her eyes flashing as she squinted slightly. She saw a figure walking in from outside the door. He was tall and handsome, dressed in a beautiful robe with a purple collar and black ribbon on his shoulder. A silver-red dragon belt hung around his neck, and his crown was a crane's wing. His appearance was hard to describe. At first glance he seemed to be standing tall, but at second glance he seemed to be in his 20s. Looking back he seemed to be in his 40s. If there was a kind-looking person who saw this person, he would be shocked. Alas, a celestial being was alive and no one dared to look at his face. Yushu thought, is this the celestial commissioner's great advice? He looks like a deity. Everyone present stood up. Those who were still standing bowed and said respectfully, Grand Secretary. Greetings to Great Secretary. This lowly official greets Great Secretary. Even the 9th Prince, Lu Tan, lowered his head and greeted the Great Secretary. The only ones who didn't move were Yushu and Jing Qin, the two inexperienced people. No need to be so courteous. The Grand Chendi had a slight smile on his face as he swept his gaze across the crowd. His gaze first paused on Jing Qin before landing on Yushu. Were you the one who escorted Daozi into the capital? Yushu hurriedly lowered her head and bowed. She knew his identity and didn't dare to be disrespectful. Commoner Yushu greets the Great Secretary. Jing Qin and I are good friends. We didn't escort him, but we helped each other along the way. She didn't know that these words had a different meaning in the ears of those who knew. The Great Secretary looked at her meaningfully and said, You've worked hard. As he spoke, he looked at Jing Qin and said with a gentle expression, Jing Qin, is Taoist Huaixian well? Jing Qin's face turned serious. He said, Master is in good health and asked me to send his regards when I see you. He also asked me to bring you a sword as a gift, but I was ambushed on the way and lost it. It doesn't matter. It's fine as long as you're fine. Titian raised his hand and patted his shoulder. It's been hard on you. You ran into danger on the way and hid everywhere. Now that you're back, you don't have to worry about anything else with me here. His words seemed to have a hidden meaning. Jing Qin understood some of it, but the others didn't. Ren Qiming walked forward and bowed. Taishu, what happened is, this seat already knows. There's no need to explain. The Great Secretary waved his sleeve at Ren Qiming and said to the crowd, It's late. Now that the Taoist has been found, this seat wants to bring him to the palace to see the Emperor so that the Emperor can be at ease. You can all disperse. Go back and do what you need to do. We'll talk about the rest tomorrow. Yes, Taishu. Ji Huaishan was the first to bow and leave. He had benefited from today and heard a lot of inside information. He had really gained a lot. Ji Xingxuan turned around to look at Yushu. She was a little unwilling, but there was nothing she could do. She thought to herself that it was fine. After all, she had made Yushu suffer this time. As for the rest, she could wait for next time. The grandmother and granddaughter were about to leave, but before they reached the door, they heard a voice saying, Wait a moment, Official Ji. Let me finish. Yushu calmly stopped Ji Huaishan and Ji Xingxuan. She lowered her head and coughed. She bowed to the immortal-like Great Secretary and solemnly reported, This lowly person has an important matter that I must report. It concerns the Taoist safety. The Great Secretary was puzzled. What is it? Tell me. Although Jing Qin lost a part of his memory and doesn't remember who killed him, the person who murdered the Taoist is not without clues. Yushu's words were shocking. Ren Qiming anxiously asked, What clues? Tell me in detail. Ahem. Yushu stood for a while and closed her eyes, feeling a little dizzy. She pulled herself together and raised her head to look at the unfathomable expression of the Grand Suggestion Point. She said in a hoarse voice, Before Jing Chen lost his memory, he had befriended me. At that time he had a treasure on him and showed it to me. Later he bid farewell to me and was killed on the way. I saved him, but that treasure is no longer on him. Even his sword must have been plundered by the person who murdered him. But later, when I arrived at the capital, I saw that treasure in someone else's hands. After she finished speaking, the building was silent. Everyone knew that the situation was serious. The great secretary looked at Yushu and said seriously, "Do you know who that is?" Yushu took a deep breath and swallowed. She slowly turned her head and raised her hand to point at a person not far away. Her lips curled into a cold smile. "It's her." The person she was pointing at was Ji Xingxuan, who was wearing a long blue dress. Ji Huaishan flew into a rage. "Don't spout nonsense. When did we ever take anything from the Taoist?" Ji Xingxuan looked at Yushu coldly. She was fearless. She wanted to see what trick she was playing. "You never took it?" Yushu put down her hand and lowered her head to touch her neck. She hooked a thread with her finger and pulled it off forcefully, revealing a small amulet. Under everyone's puzzled gaze, she brought it to her mouth and used her teeth to tear open the thread. She then dug out something from within and held it in her palm. She opened her palm and looked up at Ji Xingxuan. Her eyes were brimming with a smile. She asked softly, "Do you recognize this?" Everyone's gaze landed on her sweaty palms. Surprisingly, she was holding that sparkling yellow jade-like pearl, the adversity-blocking stone. Ji Huaishan sucked in a breath of cold air. Ji Xingxuan's expression changed drastically. She raised her head to look at Yushu. For a moment, it was as if she had seen a ghost. As the saying goes, if you don't do anything wrong, you won't be afraid of ghosts knocking on your door. When they saw the adversity-blocking stone, the first thing they thought of was nothing else but the Yunhua Ez's exam paper that was exchanged with this small bead. Yushu looked at their faces. Although she was in pain, she wanted to laugh 3 times in her heart. This pair of bastards. Did they think that she had endured until now just to be greedy for that bullshit credit? They plotted against each other this time. She only needed one move to kill them. Seeing Yushu coming out with the yellow frost stone, Jing Chen's expression changed. He looked at her pale face and didn't say anything. Shui Rui was also looking at Yushu's face. From the faint ruthlessness in the corner of her eyes, a few scenes suddenly appeared in his mind. Her messy hair and dirty face in Yang County government office, her ruthlessly kicking people when Chiu Bai bent over the table, her hidden needles when she toasted him last night. He suddenly realized that he shouldn't be worried about who she had offended, but who had offended her. "Hey, isn't this?" Ren Qiming noticed something. He walked forward and took the yellow frost stone from Yushu's palm. He weighed it in his hand and looked at it against the light. Suddenly he turned his head and asked sternly, "Lord Ji, this adversity-blocking stone, isn't it the one you showed me before? Isn't it worn on Xingxuan's hand? How did it end up in her hands? She even said it belonged to Daozi. What the hell is going on?" Even though Ji Huaishan was used to seeing storms, he couldn't help but panic at this moment. He knew that if something went wrong, it would be a small matter if he was exposed for stealing the topic, but if he was accused of murdering the imperial family, that would be terrible. Cold sweat dripped down his back. Without thinking too much, he hurriedly explained, "Reporting to Lord, Xingxuan originally had the same one, but she lost it 2 months ago. This old man doesn't know how it ended up in her hands or how it became Daozi's." Ren Qiming was very suspicious. After listening to him, he went to ask Ji Xingxuan, "Tell me the truth, where did you get this adversity-blocking stone?" Under the veil, Ji Xingxuan bit her lip and looked deeply at Yushu. While thinking, she answered, "Xingxuan doesn't dare to hide it. I picked this bead up." Yushu glanced at her, then asked Jing Qin, "Jing Qin, do you think this yellow frost stone is a treasure of your sect?" "Yes." "Did you lose it before you lost your memory?" Yushu knew that Jing Qin wouldn't lie, so she deliberately gave a vague answer. This yellow frost stone was indeed lost, but it was lost in her hands. Under everyone's gaze, Jing Qin nodded. His expression was cold, so no one could tell that he was lying. Yushu then went to ask Ji Xingxuan, "You said you picked it up. Where did you pick it up?" "Yang City." Ji Xingxuan clenched her fists tightly inside her sleeves. "In April, when I returned to Yang from the capital to visit my relatives, I found it in the gap between the horse carriages." Ji Xingxuan still remembered that day when she met a thief on the road. She saw this stone in the window. She didn't know how it got there. "You're lying." Ji Xingxuan showed a rare look of anger. "I didn't." Yushu sneered. In April, when Jing Chen was still in Yang, his brain was fine. This yellow frost stone is a rare treasure in the world. How could he easily throw it away for you to pick up? Even if you're that lucky, how could there be such a coincidence in this world? Let me ask you again, where did you get this yellow frost stone? Ji Xingxuan was angered by Yu Shu's provocation, but she was still calm. She said in a low voice, I said I picked it up. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. Of course I don't believe you. Yu Shu glanced at her and said expressionlessly, last April when Jing Chen left Yang he was ambushed on the way. His sword and this yellow frost stone were taken away. When he returned to the capital to report, your Ji family was related to that group of people, so this treasure ended up in Lord Ji's hands. Then it was transferred to you, Miss Ji. You didn't know its origin, so you boldly wore it. You didn't expect me to see it, recognize it, and then find a way to get it back with Jing Chen. Her tone changed as she moved forward, and she broke free from Shui Rui's support before slowly walking towards the Ji clan's grandfather and grandson. With her back facing everyone, her eyes narrowed into red slits as she grinned to reveal a mouthful of ghastly white teeth, and she didn't conceal the ridicule on her face in the slightest. What? Do you want me to tell everyone how we got this yellow frost rock back? If she told them, it would inevitably bring up the matter of the Ji family stealing the exam. If she didn't tell them, it would be impossible to explain. She wanted them to have a taste of this dilemma. Ji Huaishan's face turned slightly pale, but he forced himself to calm down. Ji Xingxuan looked at Yu Shu. She almost bit her lips under the veil. It turned out that she was the one who got the easy exam paper first. It turned out that she was the one who wrote the letter, threatened them, and schemed to steal the calamity shielding stone in Changchun Square. Thinking back, Ji Xingxuan seemed to have thought of something. She slowly turned her head to look at the young man in white who was not far away. Her clear eyes slowly widened, and her heart seemed to be filled with mixed feelings. So, the person who held the umbrella for her in the rain that day was him? Ren Qiming's face had already turned cold. He was already very suspicious. Seeing Ji Huaishan and Ji Xingxuan's strange expressions, he simply couldn't answer under Yu Shu's interrogation. He became suspicious. Moreover, this matter was of great importance. Even if he had a good relationship with the Ji family, he couldn't be biased. He snorted coldly and said sternly, Right, Judge Ji, what explanation do you want? It's this woman who is slandering me. Ji Huaishan was trembling with anger. He was afraid that others would believe Yu Shu's nonsense. He raised his face and said with grief and indignation, This old man has been an official for 20 years. I've always done my duty. I've never heard of this Daozi before. How could he be involved with the person who murdered Daozi? Imperial Secretary, Junior Supervisor, please understand this old man is innocent. Shui Rui stretched out his hand and lightly touched Lu Tan who was standing beside him without anyone noticing. His finger moved as he swiftly wrote the number 7 on Lu Tan's arm. Lu Tan, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly opened his mouth coldly, The witness and the material evidence are all here. You've obviously colluded with the person who murdered my Shishu. How dare you assassinate a member of the imperial family? Do you know that this is a capital crime? Yu Shu looked at Lu Tan in surprise. She then looked at Shui Rui and understood. Lu Tan's angry rebuke completely shocked Ji Huaishan. He had been an official for many years. How could he not know that there were some crimes that he couldn't even touch? This old man who was over 50 years old felt his legs go soft. He actually knelt on the spot. 2 streams of tears flowed down at the same time. He cried, Your Highness, please investigate clearly. This lowly official is innocent. Grandfather. Ji Xingxuan hurriedly squatted down in shock. She wanted to help Ji Huaishan up, but he pulled her with one hand and she knelt down with him. Ji Xingxuan was at a loss for a moment. She had never seen Ji Huaishan lose his composure like this. She looked around and saw pairs of cold and suspicious eyes. She finally realized the seriousness of the situation. The hair on her body stood on end. Her face gradually turned pale. She also knelt down with Ji Huaishan and said in a trembling voice, Imperial Secretary, please investigate clearly. Grandfather and I have been wronged. Yu Shu admired the panicked look of the grandfather and granddaughter from a close distance. She unceremoniously moved to the center and accepted the 2 people's kowtow. The pain in her left little finger pierced her brain. It was not as good as the feeling in her heart. Ren Qiming looked at the chaotic scene. He frowned and turned to look at the person who had been quietly watching. Imperial Secretary, what do you think? Yu Shu's ears were sharp and she heard it. She turned to look at the immortal, and met his gaze. His eyes were as light as the moon. Her heart skipped a beat. She pretended to be calm and lowered her head. She heard a light sigh. Guards, send them to the Supreme Court and wait for their decision. Mr. Shui, thank you for making this trip. I will go to the palace to see the Emperor and ask the Emperor to make a decision. Dong. Ji Huaishan's blood rushed to his head and he fainted. Ji Xingxuan was stunned for a moment. Then she rushed forward and helped the old man up with red eyes. She cried, "Grandfather, grandfather?" Seeing this scene, Lu Tan and Shui Rui looked at each other. Ren Qiming shook his head. Jing Qin turned his head away. Yu Shu, from the beginning to the end, had a pair of cold eyes. Chapter 286. Ji Huaishan fainted and was carried out by the guards. Ji Xingxuan did not resist and staggered out of the room. Before leaving the room, she looked back at Yu Shu. It was a quick glance that was neither angry nor angry, but there was a hint of coldness in it. Yu Shu could tell that it was not over yet. Yu Shu secretly sneered. If it was not over yet, then so be it. She was not afraid of her. She did not expect to make the Ji family extinct this time. However, with another trump card in her hand, it was inevitable that she would be skinned. Moreover, Yu Shu turned to look at the ninth prince, Lu Tan, who was standing next to Shui Rui. She always felt that they would add fuel to the fire. Even if she did not pursue this matter, the two of them seemed to have other plans. Since Ji Huaishan was an official in the court, he must have enemies and friends. She did not know if there would be more people who would help in the hour of need or more people who would hit him when he was down. Oh! Yu Shu suddenly felt a sharp pain in her head. She gasped and felt dizzy again. Her body swayed and she fell down. At the same time, two hands reached out from behind and held her firmly. Xiaoyu. So. Yu Shu shook her head. To her left it was Shui Rui and to her right it was Jing Qin. Both of them were in the same place. She felt dizzy and wanted to vomit. She opened her mouth but could not say anything. She could only raise her right hand and wave it gently. She frowned and endured the churning in her stomach. The two big shots of the Celestial Commissioner were still here. If she really vomited here, it would be embarrassing. Seeing that Yu Shu's face was getting paler and paler, Shui Rui knew that she could not hold on any longer. Therefore, he asked the Grand Secretary to leave. Grand Secretary, my sworn sister is still ill. Tonight, the junior supervisor, accidentally, twisted her finger. Please allow me to send her back first. I will go to the Supreme Court after she has settled down. The Grand Tipping Master heard the harshness in his words and turned his head to look at Ren Qiming, whose face was slightly red. He said considerately, "Go quickly. This little girl has suffered tonight. I have a high-grade blood circulation powder. I'll have someone deliver it tomorrow." Thank you, Grand Secretary. Shui Rui nodded. Just as he was about to help Yu Shu up, Jing Qin, who was on the other side, held up her elbow and pushed aside her sleeves. When he saw that her pinky finger was seeping with a small patch of dark red blood, his thin face turned pale. Xiaoyu, your hand? Yu Shu's mind was in a daze. She could not hear what others were saying. However, when she saw Jing Chen's panicked expression, she could not help but smile at him comfortingly. Jing Chen quickly found the culprit. He turned to look at Ren Qiming and frowned. Did you break her finger? If it was someone else who questioned him, Ren Qiming could still put on a cold face. However, the Taoist was not an ordinary person. Ren Qiming could only say awkwardly, "It was a misunderstanding." Hearing Ren Qiming admit to it, Jing Chen's eyes flashed. Just as he gently put Yu Shu's hand down, his other hand had already shot out. Shrinking his feet, he appeared in front of Ren Qiming in the blink of an eye. His two fingers formed a hook and actually grabbed at Ren Qiming's left hand that was hanging by his side. This sudden change caught everyone off guard. However, just as Jing Chen grabbed Ren Qiming's hand, Qing Feng, who had been standing quietly at the side, also made his move. His palm turned into a knife and mercilessly chopped at Jing Chen's wrist. Jing Chen countered with his other palm but did not let go. After 3 moves, Jing Chen flicked his wrist and pushed Qing Feng back 3 steps. He then grabbed Ren Qiming's wrist. Only then did the onlookers come back to their senses. They were shocked and shouted, "Stop! Taoist, please stop!" Jing Chen. The Taoist's voice was neither loud nor soft. However, when it fell into Jing Chen's ears, it made him pause. His 2 fingers were clamped on Ren Qiming's little finger. Junior eunuch Ren, whose wrist was caught and could not move easily, had an ugly expression on his face. Shui Rui looked at Jing Chen in surprise. If he was not mistaken, this person was planning to break Ren Qiming's finger. Jing Chen. The Taoist walked 2 steps to Jing Chen and pressed one hand on his arm. "What are you doing?" Jing Chen looked at Yushu, who was leaning against Shui Rue in a daze, and said, I've said that I'll protect Xiaoyu and not let anyone hurt her. He broke Xiaoyu's finger, so I'll break his too. Hearing his matter-of-fact tone, everyone was speechless. However, the Taoist smiled. Not only did he not stop him, he even turned to Ren Qiming and asked, You heard him. You broke his finger and now he wants to break it back. What are you going to do? Ren Qiming's face darkened, but he did not look for an excuse. He said, Taoist, just do it. Taoist. The attendant, Qing Feng, covered his injured chest and stepped forward. He reached out a hand to Jing Chen and said, Taoist, if you want to break it, then break it. It's me who broke this young lady's finger. It has nothing to do with you, Your Excellency. Qing Feng stepped back. Ren Qiming frowned and reprimanded. He had to bear the consequences of his own actions. With his current status, how could he act like a rogue? Your Excellency. Jing Chen looked at them, and for a moment he did not know whose finger he should break. The Taoist looked at this scene with a faint smile and did not try to dissuade them. Lu Tan wanted to say something, but he hesitated and did not say anything. At this moment there was a light cough and a weak voice sounded, Jing Chen, you don't have to do this. Cough cough. Sir Ren was anxious for your safety, so he hurt me by mistake. I don't blame him. Actually, Yushu was not unconscious. Her mind was still clear at this moment. She had seen Jing Chen make a move just now, so she pretended to be ignorant and waited for the crucial moment to speak. It was pure nonsense to say that she did not blame Junior Supervisor Ren. The 10 fingers were connected to the heart, so how could the pain of having one's finger broken be resolved with just a few words? However, compared to venting her anger and making enemies in the future, she was more willing to let this high-ranking junior supervisor recognize her as a good son. Moreover, she could see that Ren Qiming was a person who liked to be just and could not tolerate any wrongdoings. This kind of person had always been strict with himself. Making him feel guilty was more painful than having his finger broken. Shui Rue lowered his head to look at Yushu, who looked dispirited after seeing the doctor. He could clearly guess what was on her mind. Seeing that she was still able to play tricks in this state, he really did not know what to say. Martial uncle, Lu Tan spoke at the right time. I think Miss Yu's condition is not good. It's better to send her back as soon as possible. Don't delay anymore. Jing Chen looked at Yushu and saw her nod lightly. He hesitated for a moment, then let go of Ren Qiming and walked back to Yushu's side. Just as he was about to help Yushu, he heard Senior Supervisor Ren say, Daozi, you should go to the palace with me first to report to the Emperor. Let Mr. Shui send Miss Yu back first. Yushu's eyelids twitched and she quietly raised her hand. Using her body as cover, she grabbed Jing Chen's sleeve. What a joke. She hadn't even gotten a good explanation from Jing Chen, so how could she let him go like this? However, it was also strange. This Senior Supervisor Ren should know the secret of Jing Chen's K star. Why wasn't he afraid of the Emperor being killed? Even if the power of Jing Chen's K star was greatly reduced after the full moon, was it appropriate to take him into the palace so rashly? Jing Chen didn't know what Yushu was planning, but he wouldn't leave her side at this time even if she didn't say anything. So he shook his head at Senior Supervisor Ren and said, I want to send her back. I can't go with you. Senior Supervisor Ren looked at them and didn't stop them. Instead, he ordered the guards to send them away and sent Qing Feng to follow them, so as to not lose track of Jing Chen again. The young people left, and soon only Senior Supervisor Ren and Ren Qiming were left in the building. Imperial Secretary, in your opinion, is Ji Huaishan really involved with the thief who murdered Daozi? Whether he is or not, that's the matter of the Supreme Court. It's not the duty of the Celestial Commissioner to investigate the case. Don't you think it's strange that the little girl named Yushu is safe and sound after being with Daozi for so long? There are a lot of people in this world who are lucky, hee. Senior Supervisor Ren turned his head and patted Ren Qiming's shoulder. He left with an ambiguous smile and left with his hands behind his back. Daozi had returned to the capital, and he had to send the news to the palace as soon as possible. Young Lord Rue waited outside the Celestial Commissioner's door for a long time. Finally he saw Shui Rue and Lu Tan coming out. He quickly jumped off the carriage to greet them and asked curiously, What happened? I just saw Judge Ji and Miss Ji family being escorted away. It was late at night, and the Celestial Commissioner's door was so quiet that there wasn't even a passerby. The longevity lamp illuminated the slender shadows of people. Gusts of night wind rolled up the cold air. Yushu couldn't help coughing twice. Shui Rue frowned and said, Let's get in the carriage first. Ruilin was not blind. Seeing Shui Rue and a strange man supporting Yushu on one side, He quickly ran to the carriage and opened the curtain. Fortunately, the carriage was spacious and could easily accommodate the 5 of them. Yu Shu was the first to sit in the carriage with Shui Rui's help. As soon as she touched the cushion, she became weak. She felt so uncomfortable that she wanted someone to knock her out with a hammer. It turned out that when they came out of the carriage, Shui Rui intended to carry her, but as soon as her feet left the ground, she wanted to vomit, so she forced herself to walk out of the Celestial Commissioner's door. In the carriage, Lu Tan and Rui Lin sat on one side, Yu Shu sat in the corner, and Jing Chen and Shui Rui sat on each side. "Brother Rui, where are we going now?" Shui Rui poured a cup of tea to feed Yu Shu while telling him the address of Zhao Hui's house. Dr. He's medical skills were still trustworthy. At this time, it was better to find their own people than to find an internal physician elsewhere. Moreover, that family must be worried about Yu Shu. It was a good time to go back and report that she was safe. Jing Chen put his hand on Yu Shu's wrist and gently frowned. He put her wrist on his knee and touched the side of her waist. Just as he touched the corner of her clothes, he was stopped by Shui Rui. Looking up at Shui Rui's guarded gaze, Jing Chen did not know why he felt a little uncomfortable, but he still explained to him, "I asked Xiaoyu to prepare a pill to carry with her. You will feel better after taking one. Let go." Shui Rui didn't loosen his grip when he heard this. Even though Jing Chen's actions of attacking Ren Qiming without the slightest hesitation in the Directorate of Astronomy had caused him to view Jing Chen in a new light, it didn't mean that he could watch as Jing Chen made a move against Yu Shu. When Jing Chen saw that Shui Rui did not let go, he turned his palm to break free. Unexpectedly, Shui Rui also knew martial arts. With a turn of his wrist, he clamped his hand again. Jing Chen turned his finger to flick his wrist, and Shui Rui clenched his fist to meet it. The two did not give way to each other, and in this narrow space, they began to fight with small tricks. Yu Shu was half dead, and she did not even have the strength to open her eyes, let alone stop them. Ruilin looked at this and that. Because before Jing Chen appeared, he was kicked out by Ren Qiming, so he did not recognize him. He whispered to Lu Tan, "Who is this?" Lu Tan looked at the 2 men in front of him strangely. They were usually steady, but now they were fighting like children. His lips moved, "My youngest martial uncle." Chapter 287. It was night, but no one was sleeping in the courtyard. The front hall was bright. Zhao Hui was sitting on a cushioned chair with her belly out. From time to time she would look outside the door. Her face was full of anxiety. Yifangji was walking back and forth in front of her. Pei Jing was holding a cup of tea in his hand. He let it cool down but did not take a sip. In the afternoon, Yu Shu was taken away from Huiran Medical Center. Yifangji first went to find Pei Jing. Because he did not even know where the official came from, Pei Jing took him to several government offices in the east of the city to inquire. Finally, he described the style of the official's uniform and learned that it was the official of the Celestial Commissioner. The two returned home to discuss countermeasures. When they were at their wits' end, Shui Rui sent Lao Chue to inform them that he would go to find Yu Shu. He told them to be patient and wait for news at home. Who knew that they would wait until midnight? The more they waited, the more anxious they became. Everything was fine. How did we offend the Shangguan family? Zhao Hui was so anxious that she was crying. She was afraid that something would happen to Yu Shu. Pei Jing sighed and said, "Let's wait a little longer. That young Master Chao is not an ordinary person. There should be a way to save her." Yifangji walked to the door and looked at Yu Xiaoxiu, who had been standing outside for almost an hour. Yifangji clenched his fists and turned to Pei Jing and said, "No, I have to go to the Celestial Commissioner and take a look." Seeing this, Pei Jing turned to Zhao Hui and said, "Let's go and take a look. You wait at home." Zhao Hui nodded quickly. When the 2 men walked to the door, they saw a carriage coming from not far away. It stopped in front of the door. The curtain of the carriage was lifted, and a round-faced man jumped out. After lifting the curtain, a noble young master came down. Yifangji and Pei Jing were shocked when they saw Yu Shu coming down with the help of 2 people. They hurried to greet her. However, Yu Xiaoxiu was faster than them. He jumped up and held Yu Shu. He immediately recognized Jing Chen. Sister, what's wrong with you?" "Brother Jing." Not to mention how surprised Yu Xiaoxiu and others were when they saw Jing Chen, a group of people helped Yu Shu into the courtyard and into the bedroom. Jing Chen and Shui Rui followed them, leaving Lu Tan and Ruilin outside the door. They were polite and did not break into a woman's boudoir. Yu Shu finally leaned against the bed. She moaned and opened her swollen eyes. She saw Yu Xiaoxiu and Zhao Hui, one big and one small, snuggling on the edge of the bed. Their eyes were red and they were crying. She coughed and said weakly, "Stop. My body hurts more when I see you crying. However, no one was in the mood to joke with her. Shui Rui pulled the quilt over her and turned sideways to make room for He Fangji. He told him, "My left hand's finger was broken. I reattached it at the last minute. Please take a look at the injury." When Zhao Hui heard this, tears streamed down her face. Her body swayed and she almost fainted. Pei Jing hurriedly asked the maidservants to coax her outside to sit and wait. He Fangji rolled up Yushu's sleeve and checked her left hand. When he touched it, Yushu shivered. She gritted her teeth and endured the pain. The blood vessels on her neck were so tight that they turned blue. The few people present couldn't bear to see her like this. He Fangji couldn't help but say angrily, "Who is so vicious? To make people feel pain, they actually picked the tendons and bones and twisted them. They deserve to die." These words echoed the thoughts of the few people beside the bed. Yu Xiaoxiu's face was filled with hatred. He gritted his teeth and his face was filled with malice. Shui Rui asked worriedly, "Can it be reattached? Will there be any side effects?" He Fangji said, "It's good that it can be reattached, but I Xiaoxiu go to the kitchen and ask them to boil some water. Then bring the medicine box and the needles in my room over." "Yes." Yu Xiaoxiu wiped his tears and ran out. Hearing the conversation between Shui Rui and He Fangji, Yu Shu's ears twitched but she didn't open her eyes. Under the bed, Kim Bao poked his head out. Seeing that there were so many people around, he shrank his head back and slipped out from the side of the bed. While no one was paying attention, he nimbly climbed up the wardrobe and squatted high. His pair of black eyes stared at the people below. Shui Rui watched as He Fangji covered Yu Shu with the quilt. Jing Qin and Yu Xiaoxiu stood motionless in front of the bed. He quietly retreated. Pei Jing, who was standing in front of the window, looked at him and pondered. Lu Tan and Rui Lin were still waiting outside. When they saw him come out, they asked about Yu Shu's situation. Their worried faces were not fake. Lu Tan had a good impression of Yu Shu because of her relationship with Jing Qin. Rui Lin knew that Shui Rui valued this girl very much. In addition, last night when they were drinking at Wang Jilu, her temper made him think more of her. "Let's go outside and talk." Shui Rui thought that this wasn't a good place to talk, so he brought the two of them to the carriage. After whispering to each other for a while, Shui Rui got off the carriage alone and watched them leave before he turned around and entered the courtyard. He Fangji fixed the broken finger of Yu Shu and used acupuncture to relax the meridians. Yu Shu fell asleep in the middle. "Okay, let her sleep. I will go and get the medicine to make soup. You guys go outside first and let the maid clean her up." He Fangji asked the people around the bed to go outside and left Yundo to take care of Yu Shu. Yu Xiaoxiu stood at the door of the bedroom. Shui Rui sat down on the chair and called him over. He patted his head and comforted him. "Don't worry, your sister will wake up tomorrow." Yu Xiaoxiu turned his head with red eyes and asked, "Brother Shui, who took my sister? Why did they take her?" Shui Rui glanced at Jing Qin, who was standing outside the bedroom, and whispered to Yu Xiaoxiu, "They took the wrong person and wronged your sister. Everything has been cleared up, so it doesn't matter." Jing Qin's expression changed. He turned his head and wanted to say something, but he didn't know how to explain. His eyes dimmed and he turned back to look at the door in front of him. Just like that, the few of them stood guard outside for the entire night. At dawn the next day, He Fangji came and persuaded them to rest in the guest room. Only Pei Jing, who was slightly older, could not bear it and went to sleep. At dawn, Yu Shu slowly woke up. She moved her head and saw Yu Xiaoxiu sleeping next to her bed. Her eyes softened and she coughed twice to wake him up. Yu Xiaoxiu rubbed his eyes and sat up. Once he was awake, he asked Yu Shu if it hurt here and there. Yu Shu wouldn't tell him that it hurt like hell. She could only let him help her up and fool him to call Dr. He. As soon as Yu Xiaoxiu went out, Jing Qin and Shui Rui came in one after the other. Because Yu Shu slept with her clothes on last night and was among the patients, she didn't break the rules. When Yu Shu saw Jing Qin, she first thought of him as a fiend. Because Shui Rui was present, she didn't directly ask him if he harmed the people in her courtyard. She looked at the two of them frowning and could not help smiling. Shui Rui said in a bad mood, "You're so sick and you're still happy." "Who said that I can't be happy when I'm sick?" After sleeping, Yu Shu's spirit was much better. In addition, she had a big victory last night, so she was in the mood to argue with him. However, her broken voice was really hard to hear. Fortunately, he didn't mind her tormenting his ears. Of course, Shui Rui knew what she was happy about. Seeing that she was in better spirits, he was relieved. He asked curiously, "The stone that you took last night, was it really lost when Jing Qin was killed?" Shui Rui's question hit the nail on the head. Yushu didn't plan to hide it from him and said with a smile, "Of course not. Actually, that yellow frost stone was given to me by Jing Chen in Yang City. At that time, I didn't know it was a treasure and accidentally lost it. Who would have thought that it fell into Ji Xingxuan's hands? Afterwards, Jing Chen and I went to the capital. Do you still remember that before the De Yen examination, you asked young Master Feng to bring me to the Imperial Historian's library? I bumped into Ji Xingxuan there and saw that she was wearing the yellow frost stone. I then used a trick to take it back. She didn't know that the stone was in my hands. Last night I had an idea to use this to frame her. She was implicated in the crime of murdering a relative of the emperor. It wasn't something that they could explain with just a few words. Listening to her unscrupulous narration of how she framed others, Shui Rui was secretly happy that she was being honest with him. On the other hand, he had a headache because of her audacity. After Yushu finished speaking, she looked at Jing Chen's expression. Seeing that he was silent, she asked, "Jing Chen, what's wrong?" Jing Chen hesitated. "Xiaoyu, isn't it against morality to lie and frame others?" Hearing this, the smile on Yushu's face faded. She whispered, "Morality? I only know that they tried to harm me first. Therefore, I have to fight evil with evil. Last night you said that Ji Xingxuan already knew you. However, she pretended not to know you and tricked you back to her house. Then she brought you to the Celestial Commissioner's office to claim credit. You are innocent and do not know how evil people can be. However, I know these evil people the best. Do you think that they only want credit? If that was the case, I would not have been brought to the Celestial Commissioner's office to be interrogated and tortured. I did not intend to make a fuss about this. However, they have gone too far. How can I tolerate this? If you think that I am wrong, the Supreme Court will invite you to be interrogated in the future. Tell them the truth and tell them that I lied to them." Jing Chen saw the sadness on her face and knew that he had said something wrong. He was not an inflexible person. It was just that since he was young, he had been taught the principles of Taoism. He did not like disputes. Now that he thought about it, she suffered last night. Firstly, it was because of him. Secondly, it was because she was framed. He felt that the Ji family had reaped what they sowed. Shui Rui was listening to their conversation from the side, and it was not convenient for him to interrupt them. However, when he heard Yushu's inner thoughts, he secretly felt a bit of pity for her. He had always disliked those delicate and weak women, and they would shed tears while admiring the flowers and the moon, which would cause them to waste a great deal of time. On the other hand, Yushu was trying to show off and was suffering from her own pain, and it made his heart ache. "Xiaoyu," Jing Chen let out a short sigh and said, "I have misunderstood you. You don't have to be angry with me. You and I are sworn brothers and I don't know them. Moreover, they bullied you. Why would I expose you? I will definitely speak up for you." Yushu looked at him from the corner of her eyes. She pretended to be suspicious. "Really? You are willing to lie for me?" Jing Chen hesitated for a moment before nodding. Yushu's lips curled up. In her heart, she raised 2 fingers. Done. The Ji family will not be able to escape this time. Chapter 288. Yushu and Shui Rui and Jing Chen were talking in the room when Fangji hurriedly walked in and said that there were a lot of carriages and horses outside the gate, as well as several officials who wanted to see some daozi. It turned out that when the emperor went to the palace last night, he already knew that Jing Chen had been found and urgently wanted to see him. As soon as the sun rose, he sent people out of the palace to receive him. Yushu repeatedly said, "Jing Chen, go with them. Remember what I told you just now? It is inconvenient for me to get up. Let Shui Dage escort you out." Jing Chen nodded and said, "After I see His Majesty, I will come back to see you." Jing Chen was not only the descendant of Yun Huaizi, he was also the late Princess Chang's only son. Now that his identity was revealed, he had become His Majesty's nephew. His status was indescribably noble. Although the matter was rushed, the palace still sent a proper guard of honor to receive him. Fangji and Pei Jing watched from the door as Jing Chen was respectfully escorted to the brocade-covered carriage and escorted away by a group of imperial bodyguards. They were bewildered and hurriedly went back to their room to ask Yushu. Yushu told them Jing Chen's identity, causing the 2 of them to exclaim in surprise again and again. Shui Rui on the side said with a smile, "Dr. He, you have rendered meritorious service in treating Daozi's illness, and Ashu has saved his life. When Daozi enters the palace to report to His Majesty, he will definitely reward you. I congratulate you in advance." Fangji smiled bitterly and said, "Treating an illness and saving a person is a doctor's duty. On the contrary, Xiaoyu has suffered so much, in the end good will have its reward." They talked for a while more before Shui Rui excused himself and left, but in fact he was going to the Supreme Court to report. The Ji family's grandfather and grandson were escorted to the Supreme Court last night, so they did not know what happened. After Shui Rui left, Yu Shu drank the medicine and ate some breakfast before going back to sleep. She had exhausted herself yesterday, and in addition to her internal and external injuries she had to rest well. She slept until the evening. Yu Xiaoxiu shook her awake. Yu Shu woke up in a daze and heard that Shui Rui was here again. In the bedroom, Yu Shu sat leaning against the headboard of the bed. Her body was covered with a quilt, and her upper body was draped in a cotton-padded jacket. Her hair was neatly draped behind her head as she listened to Shui Rui's account of his visit to the Supreme Court during the day. At noon, a eunuch came to the Supreme Court to announce an imperial edict, suspending Ji Huaishan's position as the right judicial judge and ordering the Supreme Court to investigate the Daozi's murder. An official was appointed to take over the case. Because I was present last night, I was also appointed to assist in the investigation. In the afternoon, a court was set up to interrogate Ji Huaishan and Ji Xingxuan. These two grandfather and grandson insisted that the blocking disaster stone was picked up in Yiyang. They also summoned two servants from the Ji family to interrogate them. They both said that when they were in Yiyang, they had seen Ji Xingxuan in possession of the stone. Because there was insufficient evidence, it was difficult to distinguish the truth from the falsehood, so they were temporarily detained in prison to await a retrial. After listening to this, Yu Shu asked with a smile, since it was an interrogation, was there any torture? Thinking back to last night, she had merely refused to confess Jing Chen's whereabouts and her fingers had been broken. Now that Ji Huaishan and Ji Xingxuan were stained with the capital crime of murdering the imperial family, they should at least suffer some physical pain first. Each of them received 15 lashes. Yu Shu curled her lips, only a few lashes. That day when she went to beat the drum and climbed the court for Zhao Hui, she received more than this number of lashes. Shui Rui knew what she was dissatisfied about, so he explained, the lashes of the Supreme Court are half a foot wide. After 15 lashes, Ji Huaishan fainted again. Ji Xingxuan, on the other hand, was strong-willed and didn't make a sound. But in the end she was also carried away. Only then did Yu Shu feel slightly better. She asked him again, how are you going to investigate next? Will you summon me for questioning? Shui Rui said, not only you but also Jing Qin, Junior Supervisor Ren, and everyone else involved in this matter will be invited by the Supreme Court for tea. He paused, crossed his arms and leaned against the study table. He looked at her and continued, even though the Ji family's grandfather and grandson are in prison, but with just a small stone, there is no concrete evidence. Even if I interfere, they will only suffer some more physical pain. Sooner or later they will be released. Ji Huaishan has been an official for many years. Moreover, as the Celestial Commissioner's right magistrate, he has many connections in the court. If there is someone to protect him after he is released, I am afraid it will not be difficult for him to be reinstated. Moreover, that Ji Xingxuan participated in this year's Diyan examination. It is very likely that she will pass. When the results are released, her reputation will spread everywhere. The Ji family will regain their fortune and will definitely not let you off easily. What Shui Rui said, Yu Shu knew in her heart. However, there was no worry on her face. She smiled and said, this crime of murdering the imperial family was originally fabricated by me. It is not surprising that they will be exonerated. However, there is another crime that they cannot escape from. Not only will Ji Huaishan lose his position, but that Ji Xingxuan's future will also be ruined. Oh! Shui Rui's eyes flashed. He straightened his body and asked doubtfully, what other crimes do you think they have committed? Yu Shu sneered. She enunciated each word clearly, the Diyan examination. Shui Rui was startled. He blurted out, really? Yu Shu gently touched her tightly wrapped little finger that was faintly aching. She said, didn't I tell you? This yellow frost stone was originally in Ji Xingxuan's hands. I accidentally discovered it and plotted to ask for it. Yu Shu told Shui Rui about her encounter with Ji Xingxuan in the Imperial Historian's library. She eavesdropped on Ji Xingxuan's conversation with another woman. She accidentally obtained Yunhua Ez's examination paper. She guessed that the Ji family had stolen the examination paper. She wrote a letter to Ji Xingxuan in secret. She proposed to use the yellow frost stone to exchange for it. Finally, at Eternal Spring Workshop, she borrowed a rainstorm to exchange for the yellow frost stone. At the end, she snorted coldly and said, the Ji family didn't know that I was anonymous. They probably thought that I would copy the examination paper and wouldn't report them. Thus they carried on without fear. They didn't know that I directly gave up on the astrology exam. I didn't get involved in this. Shui Rui's expression changed. He really didn't expect Yu Shu to have such a trick up her sleeve. Stealing the examination paper was no small matter. Although it wasn't as serious as murdering the imperial family, if it could be carried out, not only would Ji Huaishan lose his official position, but Ji Xingxuan would also fail the Diyan examination this year. However, what shocked him even more was that Yu Shu knew the answer to the examination paper. Yet, she resolutely resisted the temptation and gave up on the examination paper. In exchange, she had the Ji family in her hands, waiting for an opportunity to make a move. Thinking about it again last night, she used the yellow frost stone to frame the Ji family and sent them to prison. It wasn't for a moment of anger, but to use the Ji family as a cover for the Diyan examination paper. It was a series of schemes. Shui Rui looked at Yu Shu, who lay on the bed with a sallow and sickly expression, and he felt a wave of agitation in his heart, and he couldn't help but ask himself exactly what sort of man would be able to make a woman like this willingly submit to him. A clear figure flashed in his mind. Shui Rui shook his head secretly. It wasn't that he couldn't see Yu Shu's persistence towards Jing Qin. It was that persistence when it came to love, lacked something. Coming back to his senses, Shui Rui said to Yu Shu, "The Supreme Court handles cases strictly. With Jing Qin and you as witnesses, we can certainly file the case of Ji Huaishan stealing the examination paper as a case. But if we want to convict them, we still lack some evidence. You just said that they took Yunhua Yizi's examination paper. They must have destroyed it a long time ago. Since we don't have any physical evidence, we can't prove that the examination paper was leaked. Ji Xingxuan wouldn't be so stupid as to copy the original question. With just a few testimonies, it won't be easy to prove that they stole the examination paper. You don't have to worry about that. Ji Xingxuan won't copy the original question, but someone else will." Yu Shu smiled evilly. Looking at Shui Rui's confusion, she explained, "After I exchanged Yunhua Yizi's examination paper for the yellow frost stone, a few days later, before the astrology examination began, I visited the human training hall with Jing Chen at night. I copied the answer paper into many copies and put them in the examinee's room, indicating that it was this year's examination paper. In this way you can go to the Celestial Commissioner to investigate the examinee's answer paper, and you can prove that this year's astrology examination paper was leaked. With Mai and Jing Chen's testimonies, do you think they can run away?" The Ji family never expected that not only did she not copy the answer paper, but she also gave the answer paper to someone else, leaving behind evidence of their crime. Yu Shu originally had no intention of accusing Ji Huaishan of stealing the exam paper. At first she only dug a trap for them. If they were lucky they could jump over it. But now she wanted to push them into a trap. Shui Rui's eyes brightened. He clapped his hands and said, "That's it. In the next 2 days I'll send someone to bring you to court for interrogation. At that time, you can tell me about the Ji family stealing the exam paper. I'll push the boat with the current and hold them accountable." Yu Shu smiled and said, "Thank you, big brother." The two of them talked in the room. Because they were discussing confidential matters, there was no one else present. However, they were a man and a woman alone, and it was not good for them to stay in the same room for too long. Yu Xiaoxiu squatted at the door and waited for a long time. When he did not see Shui Rui coming out, he raised his voice and asked, "Brother Chao, are you done talking? It's time for my sister to take her medicine." Shui Rui did not have anything else to discuss with Yu Shu, so he let Yu Xiaoxiu come in. "Ah Shu, I still have something to do, so I'll leave first. Take care of the injury on your hand. Don't move it before your bones are healed," Shui Rui reminded Yu Shu. Yu Shu saw that he was about to leave and quickly called out, "Big brother, I still have something to ask you." Shui Rui turned his head and said, "What is it?" Yu Shu said, "Where is Ji Xingxuan? I want to go to the prison tomorrow to see her." Shui Rui asked, "Why do you want to see her?" Yu Shu shrugged her shoulders and said, "Nothing, I just want to see her. Why can't I visit her?" Shui Rui looked at her and knew what she was planning. He frowned and said, "You haven't recovered yet, can't you behave yourself?" Hearing his words, Yu Shu pursed her lips and said, "There is another reason. That day in Yang City, I accidentally dropped one of her jade pendants and was locked in the ancestral hall by the old lady of the Ji family. I didn't eat or drink for a few days and almost lost my life. Now it is her turn to be locked up. Can't I go and take pleasure in her misfortune?" This was the first time Shui Rui had heard her talk about this matter. He couldn't help but recall the time when he and Yushu had just met. There was a time when he picked her up under the bridge in the heavy rain when she was being beaten up by the Ji family. He knew what the Ji family had done to her, so he knew why she hated him. "Tomorrow wait for me at home after you wash up. I will come to pick you up." As soon as Shui Rui said this, he saw a smile on Yushu's face. She nodded and said, "Okay." Chapter 289. Because Jing Chen was found, the notices posted in the city were taken down the next day. The news of Daozi's return to the capital spread like wildfire, and many people took action. Because they were suspected of plotting to murder a relative of the emperor, the Ji family's residence was also sealed and investigated the next day. The related relatives were all grounded at home, suspended from work and imprisoned. Such a commotion also alarmed some people. Let's not talk about this for now. Jing Chen was picked up by someone from the palace yesterday, and there was no news about him. Yushu got up early the next day. After changing her dressing, Fangji dressed herself neatly and waited for Shui Rui in the room. Shui Rui didn't let her wait for long. As soon as the sun rose, he came to pick her up in a carriage, and the two of them went to the prison in the west of the city. In the city of Anling, there were two prisons in the east and west of the city. One was for the convicted felons, and the other was for the prisoners who were waiting to be interrogated but hadn't been convicted. Both prisons were heavily guarded. There was a saying that only in troubled times can there be severe punishments. The Yin dynasty had been prosperous for 300 years, and now it was peaceful. Compared to the previous dynasty, the criminal law was lenient, and there were few criminals sentenced to death. But in contrast, the law was strict. All major cases were jointly tried by the Ministry of Justice, the Supreme Court, and the Imperial Censorate, and there were few unjust or false cases. The carriage stopped in front of Ningkang Street in the west of the city. Yushu and Shui Rui got off the carriage. The street was deserted and there was no one in sight. There were two high walls across the street and there was a small door in the middle. It didn't look imposing, but there was a stone tiger's head on the door with sharp teeth and a pair of copper eyes, which made people who were timid shudder. There were only two jailers guarding the door. They wore square hats, brown clothes, cloth boots, and a red unlined jacket. They held spears in their hands, and when they saw someone approaching, they crossed the spears in their hands to block the door and asked with a serious face. Shui Rui held the official token of the Supreme Court and said that he was here to visit. The jailer recognized his position, so he respectfully invited him in, asked who he was looking for, and led the way. After entering the door, there was a narrow alley, which could only allow 4 people to walk side by side. There were 2 jailers guarding at a certain distance. It wasn't the first time that Yushu was in prison. Last year, when she helped Xia Mingming raise money for the entrance examination, she participated in gambling and was arrested. But that was a small prison, not a big one. After passing the alley, they suddenly saw a wide space. There were cells on all sides and a road led to more than a dozen aisles. There were hundreds of large and small cells. The walls and eaves were raised high to block, and the eaves blocked the wind and rain as well as the light. Everything was cold. The layout of this prison also had the signs. It was like a water, and the water was dry and swamp. The people day and night and day year. You prison day. Shui Darren this way. The jailer led Shui Rui and Yushu to the front of a cell. He untied a string of keys from his trousers and stepped forward to open the door. Clatter. Clatter. The lock was pulled out and the jailer pushed open the iron door. He looked inside first and then he turned his head to Shui Rui and said, "Darren, they are inside." Shui Rui took a piece of silver from his sleeve and handed it to the jailer. "Wait on the side," he said. The jailer bowed his head and accepted the silver. He then walked away with a discerning eye. Shui Rui stood outside the door and Yushu went in alone. This cell was very different from the one she was locked in the last time. There were no bars on the outside and it was just a stone house. There was a lot of hay on the floor and a damp and moldy smell filled the air. There was a window at the top and only a beam of light shone on the wall. However, the light was enough for Yushu to see the situation inside clearly. With one glance, she saw Xingxuan with disheveled hair, dressed in a yellowish prison uniform, hugging her knees and leaning against the wall. Without her veil, Yushu would not be able to recognize her. It seems that even a beauty needs to be groomed. No matter how beautiful a bird is, it will still look the same when it falls into the mud. Yushu smiled and walked forward. She stopped a few steps away from Ji Xingxuan and didn't make a sound. She crossed her arms and looked down at Ji Xingxuan from head to toe. When she saw Ji Xingxuan's disheveled appearance, she was secretly pleased. However, she was also a little curious as to what Ji Xingxuan was feeling right now. Have you seen enough? When the jailer opened the door, Ji Xingxuan saw Yu Shu and Shui Rui outside the door, and she knew in her heart that they'd come to ridicule her, so she intentionally ignored them. But she'd underestimated their patience, and she'd overestimated her own endurance. She had spent a night in this horrible place, plus the injury on her back yesterday. The pain she had suffered since she was a child was not as much as what she had suffered in the past 2 days. At this moment, seeing the culprit appear in front of her, how could she turn a blind eye? Hearing Ji Xingxuan's cold voice, Yu Shu calmly asked, "How does it feel in this cell? Did you sleep well last night?" Ji Xingxuan heard the ridicule in her words, so she closed her eyes and did not answer. "It seems that I did not sleep well." Yu Shu answered her own question, "I am guessing that you do not like it here. But there is no other way. You will have to stay here for a long time. Murdering a relative of the emperor is a serious crime. Before the case is fully investigated, you and Lord Ji will have to be wronged as prisoners. Alas, you're young and full of vigor. It's not a big deal to stay in this damn place for a few days, but I heard that Master Ji was frightened and fell ill. He was also beaten. I don't know how many days he'll be able to endure. Perhaps he'll fall asleep tonight and won't be able to wake up tomorrow." Ji Xingxuan raised her head abruptly, suppressing her anger. "Do not curse my grandfather. If anything happens to him, I will not forgive you in the future." "You won't forgive me?" "Ah." Yu Shu tilted her head back and laughed as if she had heard a joke. Squatting down, she looked directly at Ji Xingxuan and coldly said, "Will I forgive you?" Ji Xingxuan turned her head away and snorted coldly, "You are merely colluding with Daozi to frame us. The innocent will know their innocence. Sooner or later, the truth will come to light. Do you think that everyone else is a fool to be fooled by you? The innocent will know their innocence? You have the nerve to defile these words?" Yu Shu's face was full of ridicule. "Have your Ji family not done enough shameful things? Have you, Ji Xingxuan, not done enough shameful things? Let's not talk about the past. Just recently, you found out that I was acquainted with Daozi and saw the announcement. In order to claim credit, you plotted against me, causing me to suffer the pain of having my finger cut off and almost being wrongly accused. If it weren't for my good brain, I would be the one in prison right now. You went for wool and came home shorn. You still have the face to blame me for framing you? Only you are allowed to harm others and others are not allowed to harm you. What kind of logic is this?" Ji Xingxuan's face reddened at her words. She clenched her teeth, not out of shame but out of anger. She didn't feel that she had done anything wrong in plotting against Yu Shu. She only regretted that she hadn't thought things through thoroughly. In the end, she had been bitten back by Yu Shu and ended up in this state. Yu Shu looked at Ji Xingxuan's expression and knew that Ji Xingxuan had no remorse. It wasn't that she hadn't seen this type of person before. To put it bluntly, only officials were allowed to set fires, but commoners weren't allowed to light lamps. They were allowed to point their fingers at other people's noses, but they weren't allowed to spit on them. These types of people often spoke of benevolence, righteousness, and morality. Their actions were hypocritical, but in fact, all they thought about was themselves. They never thought about the life or death of others. When dealing with these types of people who couldn't be reasoned with, one should either not reason with them or not provoke them in the first place. Otherwise, once they set their eyes on you, they would be like maggots in tarsal bones, haunting you like a ghost. For example, because of her dog shit life, Yu Shu was forced by the Ji family to become someone's concubine. Because of the 6 symbols technique, she was threatened by the Ji family with jealousy. And because of the announcement, she got into an undeserved disaster and suffered the pain of having her finger cut off. All of these things happen one by one. Did the Ji family ever reason with her? The only way to deal with these types of people was to use evil to control evil. Make them fear you, make them feel apprehensive, make them not dare to provoke you. Otherwise, as long as they don't die, as long as they have a breath left, they will rise from the ashes, making people restless. Looking at Ji Xingxuan, who was closing her eyes and pretending to be mute, Yu Shu's eyes flashed coldly. Reaching out with her uninjured right hand, she pinched Ji Xingxuan's sharp chin and turned her face towards herself. Coldly, she said, "I'm asking you a question. Why are you pretending to be mute? Don't you have this little bit of upbringing? How did that old thing from the Ji family teach you?" Ji Xingxuan suddenly opened her red and swollen eyes. Her eyes were like needles as she grabbed Yu Shu's wrist and squeezed it tightly. Gritting her teeth, she said, "Don't go too far. Don't forget that your mother is a member of the Ji family. She's my third uncle's concubine." Hearing this, Yu Shu didn't let go. Instead, she pinched Ji Xingxuan's chin and narrowed her eyes. Are you threatening me? Ji Xingxuan endured the pain and said hoarsely, I just want to tell you that you should always leave some leeway. If our Ji family doesn't have a good life, your mother won't have a good ending either. When she finished speaking, she saw a strange smile on Yushu's face. Suddenly she moved closer to her. A gust of cold air blew on her ear, making her hair stand up. She heard a soft voice in her ear, I'm the most heartless person. Even if she died in front of me, I wouldn't even bat an eyelid. Perhaps it was because the cell was too cold, but Ji Xingxuan shivered. Her eyes widened as she stared at Yushu. The face in front of her was obviously that of an ordinary woman, but for some reason, it sent chills down her spine. Unconsciously, she loosened her grip on Yushu's wrist and let it hang by her side. She grabbed a handful of hay and used it to stop the chill in her heart. Yushu pursed her lips into a smile. She looked at Ji Xingxuan with a calm and unruffled expression. She smiled to herself. The reason why she came to visit Ji Xingxuan today was not to mock her, but to take the opportunity to strike her down. She wanted to leave a shadow in her heart so that when she came to pester her in the future, she would have to think twice about whether or not she had the ability to do so. It wasn't that Yushu didn't want to eliminate the root of the problem. It was just that she and the Ji family hadn't reached the point where they were mortal enemies. It was different from Bai Qing and Qiu Biao, who insisted on fighting to the death. She wasn't a cold-blooded pervert who would kill anyone who offended her. Moreover, she didn't have the ability to wipe out the entire family. Ah Shu, are you done? Shui Rui was standing outside the door. He didn't know what was going on inside. It wasn't that his eyesight wasn't good, but that he was intentionally avoiding it. He didn't look or listen, but he felt that the prison wasn't clean. He didn't want Yushu to stay for long, so when he saw that it was about time, he called out to her. I'm leaving. Rest well. There's a good show waiting for you. Take care. Yushu let go of Ji Xingxuan's chin. She brushed her hand across the hair on her forehead. She felt that Ji Xingxuan was like a hedgehog, so she laughed foolishly and got up to leave. Big brother, let's go. Chapter 290. Yushu and Shui Rui came out of the prison cell and walked along the narrow path out of Tiger's Head. The carriage was waiting on the opposite side of the street. Lao Chue opened the curtain and the two of them got on the carriage. Shui Rui wasn't curious enough to find out what Yushu and Ji Xingxuan talked about. As he asked her if there was any other place they wanted to go next, he hung up the curtains because he found it dark and casually looked outside. He saw another carriage with a vermilion canopy driving by slowly not too far away. Shui Rui slightly stuck his head out and saw that the carriage had stopped outside the entrance of the prison they had just left. Take me home directly, big brother. What are you looking at? Oh, nothing. I'll take you home. Shui Rui turned around and sat down. If he was not mistaken, that carriage just now belonged to the seventh prince, Lu Hao. Shui Rui took Yushu back to Zhao Hui's house. He then turned the carriage around and went to Wang Jilu. He entered from the backyard and went up to the second floor. Lu Tan was waiting for him in the innermost room. Your Highness, I came late. I made you wait for a long time. Shui Rui lifted his robe and sat down opposite Lu Tan. There are no outsiders. Biaoxiong can just change my handwriting. Lu Tan poured a cup of freshly brewed purple bamboo shoots on the table and handed it to him. He asked, Did you go to see Miss Lianfang? Is her body well? Shui Rui nodded and sighed. I'm only worried that her little finger might have some side effects. Lu Tan said, Miss Lianfang has gone through a lot of trouble to protect my Shu. As he said that, he handed over a silver brocade box to him and said, This is a secret medicine used by my sect to fix bones and heal wounds when I was practicing at Tianshi Taoism. I've written the method of use inside. Bring it to her. Shui Rui's eyes brightened. He thanked him and put away the brocade box. Then the two of them got down to business. Yesterday when Shu entered the palace, Imperial Father was very happy. He ordered us princes and princesses to hold a banquet in Qingguang Hall. We introduced Shu one by one. We drank until Cho. Shu stayed in the palace last night. This morning, Imperial Father mentioned this matter in front of everyone. It seems that he intends to take Shu to worship the Imperial tomb next month. But he didn't mention that Shu was murdered on the way. Obviously, the case has not been investigated clearly. Do you have any news from your side? As soon as Lu Tan returned to the capital, he would stay at the prince's mansion for a long time and did not need to return to the mountain. Tomorrow he would have to attend the morning court session. Although Shui Rui was a fifth-grade official, he was only a deputy. He only had to attend the court session for 2 days every month. Therefore he was not present at the morning court session today. Shui Rui sipped his tea and told the story of the Ji family's involvement in the De Yen theft. He deliberately left out the details of Yu Shu and Jing Chen's visit to Pei Ringuan that night to submit the exam papers, but it was enough to make Lu Tan's expression change. This Ji family really has a lot of guts. They even extended their hands into the examination hall. I heard that in the 9th year of Zhaoqing, one of the examiners was found to have practiced favoritism and was expelled from the capital. 3 examinees were beaten to death on the spot. It was a sensation for a while. I did not expect that after 3 years, such a scandal would happen again. Shui Rui said, Ji Huaishan originally relied on the promotion of the previous head supervisor to sit in his current position. Normally he would take advantage of his seniority in the Celestial Commissioner. But in the end, his family background is not deep and he has no foundation. He has held this position for too long. Many people are waiting for him to retire next year and take over the position. Ji Huaishan is also anxious. Originally, he wanted to use the 7th prince's influence to curry favor with the emperor. Unfortunately, His Majesty's arranged marriage made their wish come to nothing. Therefore he set his eyes on this De Yen and tried to think of a way to let his family's 4th miss stand out and take the opportunity to enter the Celestial Commissioner's office. It's a pity that they made a mistake and schemed against my sworn sister. All day long they hit the geese and were pecked blind by the geese. This time they will not be able to escape this calamity. Lu Tan listened attentively to his analysis of the matter. Then he asked, last night during the Celestial Commissioner's office, Biaoxiong asked me to help. Is it because this Ji family is under Lu Hao's clique? But I have inquired and it seems that there is not much connection between the two. Shui Rui smiled faintly and said, Yun, you are often outside and have not been with Enling for a long time. There are some things that you are not very clear about. This Ji family is admittedly not under the 7th prince's clique, but that Ji family's 4th young miss is a problem in his heart. This woman is peerless in both talent and beauty, and is also good at learning. That day, the 7th prince had the intention of taking her as his consort. According to what I know, he had privately sent a jade Rui to the other. However, marriage matters are all decided by His Majesty and he could not do anything about it. The young miss of the Ji family is proud and arrogant, not willing to submit to him. When she found out about his marriage, she decisively cut off all relations with him. Saying this, he paused and swirled the half-cup of fragrant tea in his hand. He slowly said, I understand Lu Hao's character very well. As long as he cannot get his hands on something, he will not let it go. Because this person is popular all year round, he has an arrogant air and loves face. Now that the Ji family is in trouble and that Miss Ji is in prison, how could he let go of this good opportunity to be a hero and save the beauty? Moreover, Ji Huaishan has a close friend in his life. It is the 4th-rank academician of the Imperial History Library, Zhao Zhishua. When the Ji family is in trouble, no matter what, he will not stand by and do nothing. And I have heard from my sworn sister that the Zhao family is also involved in this matter. The Zhao family and the Shu Feiyin family are in-laws. As long as they plan properly, they can very well implicate this matter to the 7th prince. As long as he is involved in this matter, he will be covered in blood. In comparison, you and Daozi are fellow cultivators. Now that the emperor favors Daozi, once this matter comes out, it will add to your reputation. Lu Tan looked at Shui Rui and thought of that night when the Celestial Commissioner was only a few breaths. Shui Rui was able to have such a reaction. He couldn't help but secretly admire him. He said to himself, after listening to Biaoxiong's words, I know that my knowledge is shallow. In the future I will need to trouble you to teach me more. Shui Rui chuckled and touched his teacup. You should learn from me. It is more like learning to eat, drink and be merry. When I come back from a trip to the Supreme Court in the afternoon, I will bring you around the capital at night. I have not returned for 3 years. This Anling city has changed. You should take a good look first. Lu Tan also laughed and clinked his cup with him. The usually quiet person is now in the mood to joke. I have long heard that Biaoxiong is a playboy. Don't bring me to those places of pleasure. I have just taken off this Taoist robe for a few days and I need to cleanse my heart and mind. Shui Rui face-bombed and said, It must be that fellow Ruilin talking about me in front of you. What playboy? It is just that I was not sensible for the past few years. I have been socializing with those playboys and picked up some bad habits. Now that I have quit, other than drinking, I do not indulge in pleasure. Lu Tan nodded and did not tease him anymore. After tea, the two of them went back to the restaurant for a meal and went their separate ways. Yesterday, Yu Shu came back from visiting in prison and rested at home for 2 days. She did not see Jing Chen return and did not hear any news about him. Just when she was about to ask Shui Rui for help, someone from the Supreme Court came to ask her about the Ji family's involvement in the murder of the emperor. The office of the Supreme Court is located in the north of the city. It is only 2 streets away from the imperial city. There is an archway on the street to prohibit peddlers and pedestrians. The street is very clean and there are not many pedestrians in broad daylight. The officer brought Yu Shu into the yamen. Because it is not an official court, there is no need to go to the front court. Instead, she is questioned in the waiter at the back. When Yu Shu arrived, the spacious waiter was already waiting for 3 officials wearing black veils and red robes. Shui Rui was among them. In front of the other 2 colleagues, he did not show too much intimacy with her. He just nodded to her, hinting that she did not need to be nervous and could answer at ease. Reporting to Darren, Diane's examiner, Yu Shu is here. You may leave. With the presence of Shui Rui, Yu Shu became bolder. When asked about the relationship between the Yellow Frost Stone and the Ji family by the 2 senior officials, she framed the Ji family calmly and insisted that the Yellow Frost Stone belonged to Jing Chen and was lost when he was plotted against and lost his memory. She implied that the Ji family had something to do with the traitor who murdered Jing Chen. There was a registrar sitting on the side. He wrote down Yu Shu's words one by one. It seemed that he planned to verify it with Jing Chen later. However, Yu Shu was not afraid. She had already made a deal with Jing Chen. If the Ji family wanted to get rid of the suspicion, it would be impossible to get rid of the 2 of them. Shui Rui deliberately gave Yu Shu a chance to confess about the theft of the Ji family, so he asked at the right time, "You said that the treasure named Yellow Frost Stone was found on Miss Ji and got back from Daozi. Then why did the Ji family look very surprised when they saw the Yellow Frost Stone in your hand that night in the Celestial Commissioner's office? Obviously they did not know that it was in your hand. What is the reason for this?" Yu Shu pretended to be hesitant and said, "Because when Daozi and I took back the Yellow Frost Stone, we used a little trick, so Ji Huaishan and Ji Xingxuan did not know that it was me, let alone that it was in my hands." "What kind of trick?" "This." The other 2 officials saw that Yu Shu's words were evasive, and they realized that there was something hidden. An official surnamed Chu put on a serious face and asked, "This is related to the case, please tell the truth, Miss Yu." Yu Shu gritted her teeth. On the surface, she seemed to have made up her mind about something, but in fact, she already had a plan in mind. She sneaked into the Imperial Historian's library, accidentally overheard Ji Xingxuan's conversation with someone, and looked for the examination papers from before the Feng Shun New Year. She accidentally brought the file home and found the Yunhua EZ examination paper hidden in it. From then on, she guessed that the Ji family had stolen the questions, and then anonymously wrote a letter to the Ji family to threaten them, and then exchanged the examination paper for the Yellow Frost Stone in Changchun workshop. The 2 officials of the Supreme Court's expressions changed on the spot, and they exchanged glances. After a while they thought of asking Yu Shu, "You claim that the Ji family stole the questions. What evidence do you have?" Yu Shu lowered her head and said, "Daozi can testify that he personally handed the Yunhua EZ examination paper to Miss Ji during the chaos. After that, I went to the human training hall to inquire about the questions. This year's astrology of the Great Expansion is indeed the same as 20 years ago. Milord, you can send someone to interrogate them. I will speak the truth and will not dare to hide anything." Hearing this, the people present all had a serious expression. An official surnamed Chu turned his head and asked Shui Rui, "Official Shui, what do you think of this matter?" Shui Rui straightened his face and said, "I think it is true. If the Ji family did not know the questions this year, why did they go as promised and exchange a treasure like the Yellow Frost Stone for an invalid examination paper? In this official's opinion, we should first send someone to the Celestial Commissioner to inquire. After the investigation we must file a case. As an official of the Celestial Commissioner, Ji Huaishan's crime of stealing the questions will be increased. This crime of favoritism and fraud cannot be tolerated. In that case, I will have to trouble official Shui to make this trip. During the morning court session tomorrow, this official will report this matter to His Majesty and ask for a decision." Chapter 291. Celestial Commissioner Ren Qiming hurriedly walked into Tai Shilu and stood in front of the man who was playing chess by the window. He bowed and said in a low voice, "Grand Secretary, someone from the Supreme Court just came to inquire about the case. The leak of the astrology and astrology question this year has been leaked." "Oh." The Grand Secretary raised his head and frowned imperceptibly, asking, "What happened? Where did it come from?" Ren Qiming said, "Do you still remember the night before last? That miss you took out Daozi's belongings and pointed out that the Ji family was related to the thief who murdered Daozi. At that time, she claimed that Daozi had lost the calamity blocking stone when he was plotted against. No, it should be called the calamity blocking stone. Later, the calamity blocking stone fell into Ji Xingxuan's hands and was recognized by Miss Yu." Ren Qiming recounted how Yushu discovered that the Ji family had stolen the questions. Looking at the man's expression, his heart began to tremble. As early as half a month ago, he had discovered the phenomenon of astrology questions being leaked during the revision process. Although this question had appeared 20 years ago, it had been personally revised by the teacher at that time, so the answers weren't unknown. However, in this year's exam papers, there were over a dozen similar answers. It could be seen that it wasn't that there were many capable people, but that the questions had been leaked. 3 years ago in the Grand Yen examination, there was an incident where questions were leaked. Back then Long Yen was furious. As the chief examiner of the Grand Yen examination, Dada took the blame and was punished for half a year. Then, a group of examinees caused trouble, questioning the fairness of the Grand Yen examination. It took 2 whole months for the commotion to subside. After a lapse of 3 years, it was natural that the matter had to be dealt with carefully. Ren Qiming had reported this matter half a month ago. After some discussion, the two of them decided to keep this matter a secret for the time being. Who knew that it would be exposed today? Now that the Supreme Court is going to file a case, this scandal will definitely spread. This Ji Huaishan has been the Celestial Commissioner for more than 10 years. Who would have thought that he would make a mistake in his old age? His granddaughter's aptitude was top-notch. She originally had a bright future ahead of her, but it was about to be ruined. Although there was anger in Ren Huangming's words, it was difficult for him to conceal his regret. De Tidian rubbed the black and white chess pieces together. He pondered for a moment and said, "Right, Magistrate Ji's fate has come to an end. His granddaughter, on the other hand, has the help of a benefactor. You don't have to worry about her." As for the leak of the topic, it will certainly attract people with ulterior motives to talk nonsense. You should send people to the training hall in advance to keep an eye on it, so that people from the north and south will not be incited and damage my reputation as the Celestial Commissioner. Ren Qiming agreed and left. De Tidian threw the black and white chess pieces back into the jade bowl. Ding-dang, 2 crisp sounds were heard. He muttered to himself, "I really don't know if it's a good move or a bad move." Yushu's health was good. She had been recuperating at home for several days. With He Fangji's meticulous care and Zhao Hui's concern, she quickly recovered and her cold illness subsided. Only the fracture of her left little finger had not healed and she could not move it lightly. Ever since Jing Chen was brought into the imperial palace, there was no news of him. Yushu asked Shui Rui to inquire about him. She only knew that the emperor had arranged for Jing Chen to live in the imperial palace. It seemed that the emperor was very close to this nephew of his. This matter greatly puzzled Yushu. After thinking about it, she could not figure out why the emperor was not afraid of Jing Chen's Kidu star. It was the 19th of the first month. Yushu woke up early. She freshened up and took a few southern specialties as gifts from Beijing. She took Yu Xiaoxiu with her to Baichuan Academy to visit Academician Song. Baichuan Academy started to welcome new students on the 16th. Many children from wealthy families who had reached a certain age were sent here to study. In the past few days, it was common to see parents bringing their children in and out of the academy. In comparison, very few children were accompanied by their elder sisters like Yu Xiaoxiu. Fortunately, although Yushu was young, she was a head taller than her peers. She wore a modified Hu costume and looked quite heroic. She had the steadiness of an adult, so people did not see her as a child. Outside the door of Academician Song's study, Yushu saw that there were people inside. She pulled Yu Xiaoxiu along and waited outside. She could faintly hear the conversation inside. Academician Song does not know. Although there is a private school in my clan, most of the people in that big family are hedonistic. There are not many people who are truly interested in learning. I am afraid that this child will learn bad things again, so I deliberately sent him to another school to study. After he studies for another year and a half, I will have his father find a great E-master to take him as a disciple. After 3 years he will be able to study for the great E-master and obtain a name. Madam Shui, rest assured. With your son here, I will definitely take good care of him. With your words I am relieved. Then I will not disturb you any longer. Wuxia, mother will send a sedan to pick you up in the afternoon. As soon as she finished speaking, several people walked out of the room. A maid was supporting a woman who was dressed in silk, and behind her was a handsome young man. Yu Shu and Yu Xiaoxiu were standing at the door. The young man turned his head and saw the siblings. At first he only glanced at them and did not think much of it. However, after a few steps he suddenly turned his head back and stared at Yu Shu. Recognizing her, he stretched out his hand and said in astonishment, "Mouse Yu?" Yu Shu secretly rolled her eyes. She also recognized the pretty boy in front of her. He was a classmate of her and Xiaoxiu at the Sanja study house in Yang. His name was Shui something again. "Who are you calling? It's so rude," Yu Xiaoxiu said unhappily to Shui Wenjie. He also recognized this old acquaintance. As soon as he saw him, he reminded Yu Xiaoxiu of the unpleasant memories of the Danduan period. Then he heard him call Yu Shu by the crooked nickname that people used to make fun of in the past. How could he be nice to him? When Shui Wenjie's mother, Madame Lu, heard her son's call, she turned her head and followed his finger. When she saw the two youths in the corridor, she didn't recognize that Yu Shu was a girl and thought that they were from rich families because they were dressed in embroidered clothes. She asked in confusion, "Wenjie, this is?" Shui Wenjie was so surprised to see Yu Shu that he didn't hear his mother's question. However, Academician Song came out from inside and saw Yu Shu. He made a sound of surprise and said with a smile, "Miss Yu, are you here to send your younger brother to school?" Yu Shu ignored Shui Wenjie and bowed to Academician Song, saying, "Because of some family matters, I came to visit Sir today. I saw that Sir was receiving guests inside, so I waited outside. Sir, are you free now? I want to ask you to talk about Xiaoxiu's homework." Academician Song nodded and pointed inside the door, saying, "You guys go in and wait first. I'll come back after I send them off." Okay. Yu Shu pulled Yu Xiaoxiu into the study and didn't look at Shui Wenjie again. This unfamiliar attitude caused Shui Wenjie to come back to his senses. Then he became angry. He turned around and saw Madame Lu looking at him suspiciously, so he hurriedly said, "Mother, I'm walking around. You should go home." Madame Lu looked at Yu Shu and her younger brother, who had just walked in. Although she was confused, she didn't ask any more questions. She warned him a few more times before she was sent away by Academician Song. As soon as they left, Shui Wenjie turned around and entered the study. He strode in front of Yu Shu and Yu Xiaoxiu looked at them and asked with a frown, "Why are you two here?" A year ago the young master of the Shui family grew taller and thinner. I think he's reaching puberty. There's a red pimple on his forehead, but it can't hide his good looks. Yu Shu isn't young. She secretly compared him to the other Master Shui, and inwardly shook her head. They were from the same family and had the same surname, but her big brother Shui was much more magnanimous. Yu Xiaoxiu didn't like Shui Wenjie's tone. When he was in the Sanja study house, he was the son of a concubine. He wasn't even a member of the same family, so he had to endure the ridicule of the young masters and misses. Now was different from the past. He and Yu Shu had traveled all the way to Anling, seen life and death, and studied in a proper school. He lived a life without lack of food and clothing. The inferiority complex he used to have had long since disappeared. How could he show weakness in front of Shui Wenjie? So he angrily replied, "I'm studying here. Of course, I have to pay my respects to teacher when school starts." Shui Wenjie's expression was strange. "You're studying here?" It was no wonder that he didn't believe it. In Shui Wenjie's impression, Yu Shu and her brother were similar to the servants of the Ji family. He was already very suspicious that they would appear in the capital. Baichuan Academy was said to be one of the top foreign schools. The monthly expenses were dozens of taels. Unless they were from a rich family who could afford it. Yu Xiaoxiu vaguely guessed what he was thinking from his expression. He coldly snorted and turned his face away. He didn't want to talk to him anymore. Only then did Shui Wenjie notice that the brother and sister were dressed neatly, which was very different from the past. In his impression, the brother and sister were always wearing patched old clothes, and sometimes they were unkempt and dirty. How could they be as exquisite as they were now? At first glance, they seemed to be the children of a rich family. This discovery made him even more puzzled. Looking at the brother and sister's eyes, it was as strange as seeing a stone suddenly turn into gold. Shui Wenjie saw that Yu Xiaoxiu ignored him. He angrily turned his head and asked Yu Shu, "When did you come to the capital? I heard that you stole something and were chased out by the Ji family. Is it true?" Hearing this, Yu Shu slightly frowned and bluntly said, "Who are you listening to *T?" Shui Wenjie looked at the beautiful young girl in front of him who was spewing vulgarities. His eyes widened in shock and his mouth gaped open. He couldn't say anything for a long time. Then you are still living in the Ji mansion, right?" Shui Wenjie retracted his chin. In order to cover up his previous loss of composure, he pretended to ignore them. He raised his chin and asked, "Then you should have seen Xingxuan. Let me ask you, is she doing well?" Yushu raised her eyelids and looked at the young man in front of her. It took her a long time to remember that he admired Ji Xingxuan. She smiled strangely and answered, "Fourth Miss Ah, she is doing very well. Why didn't you visit her when you came to the capital?" Shui Wenjie gloomily said, "I just arrived in the capital 2 days ago. How could I have the time to go out?" Yushu nodded. She secretly laughed at this silly boy. If he knew that Ji Xingxuan was suffering in prison, how would he react? "Hey, wait for me outside the academy after school. I will go with you," Shui Wenjie was a little embarrassed and shamelessly suggested. In fact, he didn't know the way to the Ji family. That was why he wanted to go with them. Yu Xiaoxiu disdainfully said, "Who wants to go with you?" Shui Wenjie was displeased. "You think I want to go with you? I am going to the Ji mansion to visit, not to follow you." Yu Xiaoxiu looked at him as if he was an idiot. Just as he was about to say something, Academician Song came back from outside. When he saw that Shui Wenjie was still here, he thought that he didn't know the way. He called a book boy to lead him to the classroom. Shui Wenjie walked away, looking back every 2 steps. Chapter 292. Yushu had seen Academician Song before. This time, she gave Yu Xiaoxiu half a year's worth of silver to establish a good relationship before leaving with a gift. She didn't expect that when she got home, there would be a surprise waiting for her. From afar, Yushu could see a number of carriages and horses parked in front of Zhao Hui's house. She could vaguely see a few bodyguards riding on horseback. This made her guess that Jing Chen had come. As expected, the little maidservant Yun Do, who was standing guard at the door, saw her figure. She lifted her skirt and ran towards her. Before she reached her, she was already panting excitedly, Miss, quickly go home. Young Master Jing is back, and there are also people from the Imperial Palace. They are passing on the Imperial Edict." Hearing this, Yushu was delighted. She quickened her pace and ran home with her. As soon as she entered the courtyard, she saw a group of people coming out from the front hall. Yifangji and Zhao Hui were all there. There were also a few eunuchs with flat crowns on their heads. Among them, there was a tall eunuch wearing a well-tailored silver dragon silk robe. His feet wore a dustless pair of green cloud boots. His waist was wrapped with a spiritual blue algae jade, and he wore a snow-white ping crown around his neck. His face was like jade and his appearance was clear and pure. Even if he was a good young master, he was still elegant. Jing Chen. Yushu happily trotted in front of him. She looked up at the doorstep. From head to toe, Jing Chen looked brand new. It was as if he had been reborn. Really, when he dressed up like this, he looked like he had ascended to heaven. Xiaoyu, Jing Chen was also very happy to see Yushu. He walked down the steps and looked down at her left hand. He asked, "How's the injury on your hand? Does it still hurt?" Yushu generously extended her hand in front of him and shook her head. "It doesn't hurt anymore. I drink medicine every day." Then she stuck out her tongue and made a strange face at him. "It's just that the medicine is too bitter. It's annoying to drink." Speaking of medicine, Yushu felt a bitter taste in her mouth. Yifangji's medical skills were excellent. She was good at everything, but her prescriptions could make people die of bitterness. In the words of a doctor, if it wasn't bitter, how could she remember the lesson? Let's see if she still dared to fight fiercely next time. Hearing her complaints, Yifangji and Zhao Hui couldn't help but laugh. Jing Chen told her in all seriousness, "Medicine is only effective when it's bitter. I know a thing or two about medicine, so I asked Mr. He to take a look at your prescription. It's a very good prescription, so you have to keep drinking it. Also, I know of a special ointment for treating broken bones. I've already asked someone to brew it and I'll send it to you tomorrow." Yushu nodded. At this time, the eunuch on the side lightly coughed. He smiled and moved in front of Jing Chen. He asked, "Daozi Miss Yu has returned? Can this servant read the Imperial Edict first?" Jing Chen looked at the yellow scroll in his hand and remembered the important matter. He nodded and said, "You read it." So the eunuch stepped forward and waved the horsetail whisk in his hand. He raised his head and said, "Dian Examiner Yushu, Dr. Yifangji, listen to the Imperial Edict." In addition to Jing Chen, everyone in the courtyard stood beside him. When Yushu saw that Yifangji was about to kneel with Zhao Hui, who had a big belly, she hurriedly supported her and knelt on the ground together. She didn't have the thought of kneeling. After all, even if she hadn't eaten pork, she had seen pigs run. Yushu had seen this kind of imperial edict ceremony many times in her previous life. She didn't think that she would have the opportunity to experience it personally in ancient times. For a moment it was very fresh. She didn't really listen to what the eunuch read at the beginning. She only heard the reward at the end. Because you saved Daozi on the way and escorted him back to the capital, I am grateful for your sincerity. I specially reward Yushu with 100 taels of gold, 100 mu of fertile land, 15 pieces of high-grade tribute satin, 10 pieces of colorful rainbow, 10 pieces of embroidered tassels, 10 pieces of green sparrow fur, 10 pieces of Nanyang cotton, 1 set of dragon horse and river painting, 5 treasures of Qilin and auspicious beasts, 1 piece of Fushan auspicious jade, 100-year-old red ginseng, and 2 cloud Ganoderma. In addition, Dr. He's traditional Chinese medicine diagnosis helped Daozi's illness. We hereby bestow upon you the title, Wonderful Hands and Loyal Heart, and a golden inscribed board. I hope that you will save the world and receive the benevolence of heaven. Miss Yu, Dr. He, come forward to receive the imperial edict. There was a long list of rewards including gold, silver and treasures. Yushu's eyes lit up when she heard it. Only then did she know that the carriages outside were filled with rewards. After waiting for the imperial edict to be read out with great difficulty, she quickly kowtowed to express her gratitude. Then she helped Zhao Hui up and bowed with Yifangji to receive the imperial edict. The inscribed board bestowed by the emperor was no different from a golden signboard. Yifangji was so excited that his face turned slightly red. When he held the imperial edict in his hands were still trembling slightly and his heart was thumping non-stop. Zhao Hui was so happy for him that the corners of her eyes turned red. On the other hand, Yushu was thick-skinned. After touching the imperial edict, she grinned and went to thank the eunuch. She asked for his surname and searched her body, wanting to take out some money to bribe him. However, she had just paid Yu Xiaoxiu's tuition fee in the morning, so she only had a few pieces of silver in her sleeves. The eunuch surnamed Chen was a very shrewd person. He understood Yushu's intentions and smiled as he gently pushed her away. He said, Miss Yu, there's no need to be so polite. It's already a blessing for this old servant to be able to stand by Daozi's side for a while. This old servant has only been out for a long time, so I'll go back to reply to the imperial edict. Yushu said embarrassedly, Thank you for your trouble, eunuch. I'll see you out. Yesterday Yushu had just seen Shui Rui, so he had expected that someone from the palace would come over to bestow rewards. He had given her a few important points in advance. The first thing was to be polite to the eunuchs from the palace. Although these eunuchs didn't have high ranks, once they came out of the palace, they represented their masters, so she couldn't neglect them. Jing Chen saw that Yushu and He Fangji were seeing eunuch Chen out, so he also followed. Eunuch Chen turned his head to see them and stopped in front of the door. He swept his horsetail whisk and said with a smile, Miss, please wait a moment. In a moment I'll have them bring the rewards in. You can put them in your place. Daozi, this old servant will take his leave. Remember to return to the palace in the evening. Don't make the emperor wait anxiously. And Jing Chen grunted. Yushu watched as the eunuch mounted a short-legged horse and staggered away with his entourage. Only then did she turn her head to ask Jing Chen, You still want to return to the palace tonight? Jing Chen said, His Majesty ordered people to clean up the Princess Fu. Only when everything is ready will I be allowed to move in. I'll be staying in the palace for the next few days. Yushu's expression turned strange. She saw that He Fangji and Zhao Hui were all focused on the imperial bestowment plaque that had just been brought in. She pulled him to the side and asked in a low voice, What about your Qidu Xing? Doesn't His Majesty know? Jing Chen's face broke into a smile. Lowering his head, he put his hand into his lapel and took out a brocade pouch the size of his palm and handed it to her. What is this? Yushu curiously took it and looked at the brocade pouch in bewilderment. She saw that the top of the pouch was embroidered with multicolored thread with a coiling dragon piercing through the clouds. It was unbelievably exquisite. She pinched it and found that there was something soft inside. She was about to open it to see what was inside when she heard Jing Chen say in a low voice, 300 years ago when Dan was founded, and Wu Xingdi was worshipping on Mount Tai. When Empress Ningzhen was offering sacrifices to the heavens, she wrote an elegiac oration. It has always been placed in the imperial mausoleum in the eastern suburbs. It has been drawing the energy of the 5 dragons for 100 years and is auspicious to the 4 directions. Hearing this, Yushu sucked in a cold breath. Her hand trembled and she almost dropped this priceless treasure to the ground. She thought, oh my, and quickly held the brocade pouch. She did not dare to open it and handed it over to him like it was scalding her hand. She gave him a light stare and said, "Quickly put it away. If I break it, you won't be able to compensate me." She asked again, "What is the use of this? Is it the same as the adversity blocking stone?" Jing Chen took the dragon cloud brocade pouch and put it back into his robe. He shook his head and said, "It's not the same. With it, I can suppress the Kata star in my body from acting up. As long as this thing doesn't leave my body, it won't affect the people around me." Yushu opened her mouth wide and grabbed his sleeve. Are you serious?" Seeing that Jing Chen nodded, Yushu was so happy that she almost jumped up. She asked him again, "Then in the future you won't have to avoid people anymore and you can interact with people normally?" Jing Chen nodded again. The smile on his face clearly showed that he was relaxed. When he received the funeral oration and heard about its function, he was also very surprised. The first thing he thought of was to tell her so that she could share this happiness with him. Yushu excitedly scratched her ears. Her mind couldn't help but become active. She wanted to say something but stopped. "Then now that you have this, you still can't. What I want to say is, now that you have this, you still can't rashly move your Dao heart?" Understanding what she meant, Jing Chen's smile faded. He shook his head gently and looked at her apologetically. "This longevity funeral oration can only suppress the Kata star's outbreak. It can't suppress my Dao heart. If my Dao heart is moved, there will be love and hate. It will still cause trouble everywhere. It can't be avoided." "Oh." Yushu's ears drooped in disappointment. She was happy for nothing. She thought that she could continue her fate with this fool. Thinking about it, if the Kata star could be so easily removed, why would Jing Chen need to hide in the mountains for 18 years? It seemed that this funeral oration could only treat the symptoms but not the root cause. "Xiaoyu?" Yushu raised her head and saw the worry on Jing Chen's face. She smiled at him and changed the topic. She said, "This is good. You don't have to worry about implicating others anymore. You also don't have to hide all day. I also don't have to worry about you anymore. I'm afraid that I'll have bad luck when I'm with you." Hee. She didn't mean it, but Jing Chen felt guilty when he heard it. He remembered that when he lost his memory, he unintentionally brought her a series of disasters. He felt very guilty and respected her even more. He was grateful for the care she gave him during that period of time. Yushu still wanted to ask Jing Chen about the matter of his broken life, but she heard Zhao Hui calling her. She turned her head and saw that chests were being carried into the courtyard. She suppressed her questions and responded to her. She said to Jing Chen, "Let's go and see what His Majesty is rewarding us with." The reward this time could not be said to be not generous. Just the dozens of rolls of finely woven cloth would be worth more than 1,000 taels of money. There were also several treasures, such as the 100-year-old ginseng and lingji, which made Fangji click her tongue in admiration. But among them, the thing that made Yushu smile the most was the round gold yuan bao. The more Yushu looked at it, the more she liked it. She couldn't help but say to Jing Chen, "This time I'm rich. Thanks to your good fortune, ha." There was a saying that the poor used copper, the rich used silver, and no one used gold. This saying meant that gold was too expensive and not many people could afford it. It was true. After Yushu entered the capital, she had seen a lot of money, but this was the first time she had seen a pile of gold. Her eyes were filled with dazzling gold. Just looking at it made her, a miser, blush and her heart beat faster. Chapter 293. There were a total of 6 chests and cages bestowed by the emperor. Other than a gold-lettered signboard, the rest were given to Yushu. Because the items were valuable, it was not easy for Zhao Hui to make a decision. After asking Yushu, she had people first carry these chests and cages to an empty room in the rear courtyard to be tidied up later. Fangji and Zhao Hui originally wanted to ask Jing Chen to come down to eat, but the kitchen did not have any good dishes to serve. Although they were not unfamiliar with each other, Jing Chen's status was different from the past. The husband and wife were more reserved and did not dare to be negligent. They called Yushu, who was sitting in the living room and talking with Jing Chen, to the back to ask how they should prepare. Yushu's heart ached for Zhao Hui's protruding belly. She did not want her to work too hard, so she said, "Mother, you should go back to your room and rest. Let Godfather take a look at your pulse. I am taking Jing Chen out to eat. He is not an outsider, there is no need to treat him as an outsider." Zhao Hui's belly was getting bigger and bigger. If she continued to toss and turn like this, her body would not be able to endure it. Hearing what was said, she hesitated for a moment and then complied. Shi and He Fangji went to the living room and excused themselves to Jing Chen before returning to the rear courtyard to rest. Yu Shu took Jing Chen out of the door and sat in the carriage that the palace had specially prepared for Jing Chen. They did not go anywhere else and directly went to Wang Jilu. The interior of the carriage was decorated very comfortably. There was a leather seat, soft mattress, a small red sandalwood tea table, and a horse lantern hanging from the ceiling. The two walls were cleverly chiseled round windows, allowing a thin layer of light from outside the carriage to enter. It was both shaded and bright. Yu Shu lifted the curtain and looked at the armed bodyguards riding on horseback beside the carriage. She turned her head to ask Jing Chen, "Were these two people also arranged by His Majesty for you?" Jing Chen said, "He said it's for my safety." Yu Shu burst into laughter. Only Jing Chen would believe this kind of words. From her point of view, these two imperial bodyguards were clearly following him. It seemed that what she said yesterday was not false. The emperor really did value Jing Chen, this nephew who had returned to court after being separated for many years. Not only did the emperor give him face, he rewarded him with a lot of things and allowed him, a grown man, to live in the palace. Furthermore, there were people following him everywhere, as if he was afraid that he would get lost. "Where are we going now?" Jing Chen asked as he looked at the unfamiliar street outside the carriage. A few days ago, he had been picked up by the palace to meet the emperor and stayed in the palace for a few days. This was the first time he had left the palace. Yu Shu said, "There's a restaurant in the north of the city. It's opened by Brother Shui. A while ago he invited me to help out as a manager. The food there is delicious and it's a quiet place. It's just right for us to talk." Because there were eyes and ears on both sides, Yu Shu did not mention the topic of Jing Chen's K star and the fate breaker in this carriage. Yu Shu pointed the way and let the coachman leave from the back door of Wang Jilu. Yu Shu knocked a few times on the door of the backyard. Xiao Dai, who was passing by with a plate, opened the door. "Miss?" Not seeing Yu Shu's shadow for a few days, the little lass was very surprised. She quickly invited her in and ran ahead to inform Lin Fu. Yu Shu led Jing Chen upstairs. The two imperial bodyguards followed closely. Yu Shu did not say anything when she saw them. When they arrived at the door of her room, she first opened the door to let Jing Chen in. She stood at the door and waited for a moment. Then she saw Lin Fu lifting his robe and running upstairs. "Miss, you're here. Have you had lunch?" Lin Fu put on a smile. Seeing the imperial bodyguard standing in front of the door and an unfamiliar young man in the tea room, although he was curious, he did not ask too much. Yu Shu pointed at the two imperial bodyguards and said to Lin Fu, "Old Lin, bring these two big brothers to the front for tea and rice. Treat them well. Also, make a few light dishes and send them upstairs. No wine. Put it all on my bill." "Yes, I will go prepare now. The two of you please come downstairs." Lin Fu gestured for them to go. The two imperial bodyguards were reluctant to leave at first. It was only after Jing Chen spoke that they followed Lin Fu. After sending them away, Yu Shu closed the door and sat at the table. She faced Jing Chen and talked. "Let's talk about serious matters. You have also seen the major. Have you inquired about the whereabouts of the fate breaker?" Yu Shu said. Jing Chen shook his head and said, "The major told me that the time is not right. He told me not to be impatient." Yu Shu was puzzled. "What do you mean by the time is not right? Isn't he just looking for one person? Does he not know where that person is?" Jing Chen still shook his head. He said that when the time is right, the fate breaker will appear. There is no need to go through the trouble of looking for Yu Shu. Yu Shu frowned. "Then when will the time be right?" Jing Chen still shook his head. "I also do not know." Yu Shu said gloomily, "Isn't this the same as not asking? When you went down the mountain, what did your master tell you? He told you to come to the capital to find the major. Did he have any other instructions?" From her point of view, the 10,000 life funeral oration on Jing Chen's body was something that treated the symptoms but not the root cause. To completely break Jing Chen's innate cursed fate without any worries, they still had to find the so-called fate breaker. Daoist Qing Zheng once told her that if the fate breaker was not found, not only would the person who changed his fate be in danger, but the fate breaker himself would also die. After being asked by Yu Shu, Jing Chen thought for a moment. After thinking for a while, he really remembered something. "Master also told me to be careful of women." Cough cough. Yu Shu choked on her saliva. She looked at Jing Chen with a strange expression. She wanted to say something but could not say it. Be careful of women? This was a wide range. She was a woman, so did that mean that Jing Chen also had to be careful of her? Yu Shu only took this sentence as a joke and did not look into it. Seeing that she could not get anything useful out of him, she could not help him in any way, so she could only put aside her worries for the time being. Not long after, Lin Fu asked Xiao Dai and Xiao Qing to send food in. He then greeted outside the door and brought a few letters to Yu Shu. When Yu Shu saw the 4 words "for Ashu" on the envelope, she could guess who had sent the letters. She put down her chopsticks and motioned for Jing Chen to continue eating. She opened the letters and read them one by one. There were a total of 4 letters. Counting the days, Xia Mingming and Ji Xingxuan came to make trouble on the 15th night. In the past few days, Xia Mingming had written almost 1 letter a day. The first letter was nothing special. It was nothing more than a reminiscence. He told Yu Shu that she was grounded by her father and could not leave the house. He explained why he did not look for Yu Shu and apologized for causing trouble at the restaurant during the Lantern Festival. He did not mention a single word about Ji Xingxuan. This letter was sent on the 16th day. The second letter was much shorter. It was an appointment for Yu Shu to meet on the morning of the 20th of this month at Wang Ji Lu. This letter was sent on the 17th day. The third letter was interesting. It mentioned that the Ji family was in trouble and the news that Daozi had returned to the imperial court. Xia Mingming didn't know where she heard that Yu Shu was living in the Ji family and was very worried about her situation. After reading the first 3 letters, Yu Shu's mood had to be said to be good. At least she could see that this girl Xia Mingming was not an ungrateful thing. Until now, she still remembered her kindness. When she heard that the Ji family was in trouble, she hurriedly wrote a letter to ask about her safety. Putting these 3 letters aside, Yu Shu opened the 4th letter. This time she suddenly frowned. Ashu, the emperor wants to appoint me to the 9th prince as a concubine. I don't need to return to Jiangnan anymore. It was a plain sentence. It was impossible to see the mood of the writer at the time. But when Yu Shu stared at these 2 lines for a long time, she could smell a sour taste. What kind of person Xia Mingming was? Yu Shu, who had eaten, lived and gone through trials and tribulations with her, was very clear. She was a willful but naive little girl, smart but simple-minded, stubborn and affectionate. If this kind of girl married into the imperial family, what awaited her was definitely not happiness or beauty. Compared to the Xia Jiang family's rule that the children of the Xia family had to enter the mountains to seek the Tao, the road of marrying into the imperial family was filled with thorns. What's more, this arranged marriage was clearly not a whim of the emperor. Yu Shu recalled that after Xia Jiangying's death, the Xia Jiang family stayed in the capital for several months and did not return. And the 9th prince had just recently returned to court. This was clearly an arranged marriage. Speaking of the 9th prince, Yu Shu suddenly remembered that on the day of the Lantern Festival at Wang Ji Lu, there was a fair-faced girl sitting next to Lu Tan. With her experience, she could see that Lu Tan was clearly interested in that girl. At his age, he was in between a young man and a young man. His feelings were still pure. Once his heart belonged to someone, there was no room for others in his eyes. If Xia Mingming interfered at this time, even if it was against her will, Lu Tan would still feel disgust towards her. Xiao Yu, what's wrong? Who wrote the letter? Jing Chen asked when he saw that Yu Shu, who was smiling just now, frowned and had a worried expression. It was Mingming. Yu Shu folded the letter and stuffed it back. She put the few letters together into her sleeve. She looked up at Jing Chen and remembered that he and the 9th prince were from the same sect. The two seemed to be very familiar with each other. She asked, Jing Chen, how is your relationship with the 9th prince? Are you talking about martial nephew Zhongyun? Jing Chen recalled, he entered the mountains at the age of 7. It was me and 3rd Shixiang who received him. Because of the Kata Star's attack, I spent half of every month in the back mountain to cultivate. I did not often work and rest with the disciples of the same sect. 3rd Shixiang was responsible for bringing me meals. Sometimes he would bring Zhongyun with him. Thinking about it, I have known him for 9 years. I only found out a few years ago that he is also a member of the imperial family and is my cousin. After listening, Yu Shu smiled and said, in that case you and big brother Shui are relatives. Jing Chen thought about it and agreed. His birth mother was the younger sister of the current emperor, and the emperor was his uncle. Shui Rui was the nephew of the imperial concubine, and the emperor was his uncle. Lu Tan was weak and had to call them cousins. Yu Shu heard that Jing Chen and Lu Tan had a good relationship. She was about to ask Lu Tan in detail when she heard someone outside the door reporting, Miss, young master is here with his highness 9th. Please bring the guest in the room to sit in the Shui room. Speak of the devil and the devil appears. She had just thought of these 2 people and they came. Got it? I will go over now. Yu Shu responded outside the door. She stood up and smiled at Jing Chen. Let's go and meet your relatives. The two went out the door. The Yahuan in front led the way to the innermost room on the second floor. She knocked lightly on the door. When she heard a response from inside, she pushed the door open. Yushu walked in first. She walked around the glass screen in front of the door. With a glance, she saw 3 people sitting at the round embroidered table. Shuirue Lu Tan, and the unidentified female that she had seen at the Lantern Festival last time. Because of her previous thoughts, Yushu couldn't help but stare at the other girl a few more times. She didn't think that when the other saw her, she would suddenly stand up. A pleasantly surprised smile bloomed on her plain and white face. She walked around the table and quickly walked towards her. She jumped into the arms of Jing Chen, who had just walked in from behind her. Chapter 294. Seventh Senior Brother. Jing Chen caught the young girl who had pounced on his chest and took a step back to steady himself. He looked down and said in surprise, "Shui Yun?" The young girl in his arms raised her head, her fair face full of joy. The corners of her moist eyes were a little red, and her soft voice had a little grievance as she called out, "Senior brother, I missed you so much." Yushu stood beside the two of them. Her gaze moved from the unknown young girl's arm around Jing Chen's waist to Jing Chen's hand on her shoulder, and then the two of them looking at each other. She gently raised her eyebrows and had a guess about the young girl's identity. She coughed and cleared her throat, breaking the atmosphere of reunion without hesitation. "Jing Chen, who is this young girl?" Hearing this, the young girl seemed to realize that there was someone else in the room. She hurriedly let go of Jing Chen, pushed his chest and took a step back. She lowered her head and wiped the corners of her eyes with her sleeve. "This is my junior sister, Shui Yun." Jing Chen answered Yushu, then turned to look at the young girl in front of him. He frowned slightly and asked her, "Why did you come down the mountain? Do Uncle Master and Master know?" Shui Yun hurriedly nodded and said, "They know. Father allowed me to come down the mountain to find you. If you don't believe me, you can ask Chong." Jing Chen looked at Lu Tan, who was sitting by the table. Lu Tan testified, "It was Jinren Huai Yun who asked me to bring little Shirgu down the mountain." Jing Chen was puzzled. "Then why didn't I hear you mention it when I was living in the palace these days?" Lu Tan looked at Shui Yun, who was winking at him, and said with a wry smile, "It was little Shirgu who didn't allow me to talk about it." "Chong Yun." Shui Yun scolded him. Seeing Jing Chen's confused gaze, she lowered her head and said embarrassedly, "Senior brother, you finally got to see your family. I think you must have many things to ask the emperor. I don't want you to be distracted, so I told Zhongyun to hide it from you." As she said this, she raised her head and looked at him, who was unharmed. Her eyes reddened. "I heard from Chong Yun that you encountered bad people on the road and lost your memory. Thank goodness you are safe and sound." Jing Chen's expression softened. He raised his hand and gently placed it on the top of her head. He said gently, "I've made you worry again." Shui Yun bit her lips and slowly raised her hand to grab the corner of his sleeve. Yushu quietly watched this pair of brothers and sisters interact as if there was no one else around. Her eyes flashed, but this time she didn't say anything to disturb them. Instead, she turned around and walked to the table. She bowed to Lu Tan and greeted, "Ninth Highness, I apologize for my lack of manners just now." Lu Tan waved his hand and said, "It's nothing. Miss Lianfang, please sit." "Thank you, Your Highness." As soon as Yushu sat down, a cup of tea was handed to her hand. The tea was glistening and still had water vapor rising from it. "This is the flower tea freshly picked this month. It's sweet and not bitter." She tilted her head to look at Shuirue. She picked up the cup of tea and sniffed it. As expected, it had a light fragrance. It wasn't the bitter tea she wasn't used to drinking. "Thank you." She took a small sip. The taste wasn't bad. Shuirue looked at Jing Chen and Shui Yun, who were standing next to the screen and talking in low voices. He withdrew his gaze and said to Yushu, "It seems that His Majesty's Imperial Edict has arrived. How is it? Are you satisfied with the reward?" Yushu smiled and said, "I can't hide anything from you." Thinking of the box of gold ingots, her mood improved for some reason. Lu Tan, who was sitting to the side, said, "Of course I can't hide it from him. This is the—" He suddenly stopped mid-sentence. Yushu curiously asked, "What is it?" Someone stepped on his foot under the table. Lu Tan had no choice but to change his words, "This is what you deserve." Without waiting for Yushu to think about his incoherent words, Shuirue opened his mouth and asked her, "Have you eaten?" "I ordered some food and wine. Do you want to eat some more?" Yushu nodded. Just now she was in her room reading Xia Mingming's letter and didn't eat much. She couldn't help but turn her head to look in Jing Chen's direction. After thinking for a bit, she asked Lu Tan, "May I ask your highness, does your sect also have female disciples?" She had always thought that Taoist priests were all male, but Jing Chen clearly said that Shui Yun was his junior sister. Obviously they were from the same sect. This was strange. Hearing this, Shui Rui and Lu Tan both laughed. The latter explained to her, "Of course there are. Taoism and Buddhism are different. Both men and women can cultivate and pursue the Great Way. Taoists pay attention to letting nature take its course and nothing can be forced. Therefore, many Taoist sects allow their disciples to get married and have children. Unlike Buddhism, who insist on the purity of the six senses and cut off the mortal world. So that's how it is. I've learned a lot." Yushu cupped her hands towards Lu Tan. At this time, the pair of brother and sister also finished speaking. When Yushu looked up, she saw Shui Yun walking over and stopping in front of her. She lowered her head and clasped her hands together, bowed to her and said gratefully, "Miss Yu, thank you for saving my 7th senior brother and protecting him all the way. Shui Yun can't thank you enough. In the future, I will definitely repay your great kindness." Yushu looked at her and then looked at Jing Chen, who was standing behind her. Seeing that his expression was normal after listening to her thanks, she smiled faintly and stood up. She raised her hand to support her junior sister and said, "There's no need to do this. Jing Chen also saved my life. If you want to talk about repayment, he has already done so." Shui Yun straightened up and looked at Yushu. A smile suddenly appeared on her tranquil face. "Senior brother is right. You really are a good person." Yushu was speechless. She thought that this pair of brother and sister were indeed from the same sect. They both didn't know how to read the situation. How did she look like a good person? Was it written on her forehead or was it written on her face? "Alright, if you have anything to say, sit down and talk. It just so happens that we met here today and there's nothing else to do. Take your time and talk." Shui Rui raised his hand and motioned for them to sit down and talk. Shui Yun sat down next to Yushu and patted her other side, indicating for Jing Chen to sit down. She reached out for the teapot and teacup, poured water for him and watched him drink the tea with a smile. When he finished drinking, she spoke to him, "Senior brother, have you eaten?" "I have." "The food here is better than the food on the mountain, right?" "Yes." "Is it as good as the food I make?" "Hee, senior brother, you're still the same, pretending to be mute when you can't answer." Yushu sat next to them listening to their questions and answers. Suddenly she felt a little unhappy. This feeling was like she had spent a lot of effort to solve a difficult problem. Only after a long time did she realize that this problem had been solved by someone a long time ago. She was not the first person to discover this problem, nor was she the first person to try to solve it. She shook her head, dispelling this ridiculous thought. She raised her cup to drink tea but found that the cup was empty. Just as she was about to take the teapot, she heard someone beside her say in a low voice, "If you want to eat later, don't drink too much tea. Otherwise you'll have a stomachache during dinner." Although Shui Rui was talking to Lu Tan, he did not forget to pay attention to Yushu's movements. Seeing that she drank 3 or 4 cups of water and still wanted to pour, he stopped her. Yushu withdrew her hand and leaned to the side. She might as well listen to Shui Rui and Lu Tan's conversation. With this distraction, she no longer cared about what the two of them were talking about. This year's Double Yang gathering will definitely be very lively. Not only will the southern head Xiajiang clan be in the capital, I just heard the day before yesterday that the 6th young master of the Wenqin clan is also participating in the Diyan examination. I wonder if they will come and cause trouble. Cousin, don't worry. With the Xang clan's great exchange shop and my Xiao Shirgu, even if I don't win this time's Double Yang gathering, I won't make a fool of myself. Yushu heard them mention the Double Yang gathering a few times. Curious, she interrupted, "Big brother, what is the Double Yang gathering?" Shui Rui and Lu Tan looked at each other, then turned to her and explained, "Every year that there is a Diyan examination, starting from the Dragon Festival on the 2nd day of the 2nd month, there will be a grand gathering in the city of Enling. It will last for 49 days. It is organized by the Imperial Court, and all the major exchange shops in the capital will participate. Merchants from all clans will gather there to compete. Whoever can come out on top will be bestowed with the golden plaque of the world's best shop by the Emperor. It is a glorious event. It is called the Double Yang Gathering." Yushu looked at Lu Tan and asked in confusion, "Then why did His Highness say earlier? Are you going as well?" Lu Tan faintly smiled but didn't answer her. At this time, a servant knocked on the door and brought the dishes and wine. The topic stopped there. Yushu could see that he didn't want to talk to her more, so she tactfully didn't ask again. It was just that in this moment of silence she heard the voice on the other side. "Senior Marshal brother, try this. I ate it the last time I was here. It's not greasy at all. And this, it should suit your taste. Senior Marshal brother, let me help you fill the soup." Jing Chen looked at the small mountain of plates and bowls in front of him. His chopsticks stopped in midair and he didn't know where to start. He had eaten lunch with Yushu before, so he was already full. In fact, he didn't have an appetite now. He didn't want to force himself to eat, but he also didn't want to brush off her good intentions. Yushu glanced at Jing Chen's embarrassed look and secretly laughed. "Serves you right." She rolled her eyes and reached out to pick up a big and fat chicken leg. She passed Shui Yun and steadily piled it on top of Jing Chen's bowl. When he looked at her, she smiled sweetly at him. "Here you are. Don't you like eating chicken legs the most?" "More." Hearing this, Shui Yun was very puzzled. "Senior Marshal brother, when did you like eating chicken legs?" If she remembered correctly, her 7th Senior Marshal brother rarely ate meat all year round, let alone chicken drumsticks. Jing Chen looked at the chicken drumstick on the bowl and thought of something. There was a smile in his eyes. He moved his chopsticks and picked it up. He put it into his mouth. Yushu bowed her head and smiled. The dissatisfaction in her heart disappeared. She didn't know that her every move was seen by another man, and she couldn't ignore it. Shui Rui shook the wine cup in his hand, and a figure was reflected in his eyes. He only felt that this fragrant and smooth Jingquan wine was a little astringent today. After drinking a cup, there was a bitter taste in his mouth. However, he liked this taste, so he could only drink one cup after another. When he was a little drunk, he suddenly thought of a sentence to describe himself. It was nothing more than asking for trouble. The meal lasted until the afternoon. Jing Chen was going back to the palace and Lu Tan happened to be going with him. Shui Yun was temporarily staying in Lu Tan's guest house, so they had to send her back first. Yushu didn't want to join in the fun, so she didn't go with them. Instead, she and Shui Rui sent the 3 of them to the back door. Watching the 2 carriages leave one after another, Yushu turned around and said to Shui Rui, "Big brother, I'm going upstairs to check the accounts of these days. What about you? Do you want to go somewhere else?" Shui Rui touched his forehead with one hand and shook his head lazily. "I'm going back to my room to sleep. Call me when you're done checking the accounts." Yushu saw that he was indeed drunk. She thought that he must be tired after handling cases for days, so she quickly waved her hand and said, "Then you go and rest quickly. I'll ask the kitchen to make you a hangover soup and send it to you later." You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.